Otaku in the Marvel DC Universe. Hello again, dear adventurers of the multiverse. Thanks for joining us once more on this epic journey. Remember, this story is pure science fiction from our wild imagination, so don't go trying to summon dragons in your backyard. The rights of this amazing novel belong entirely to its original author. We are only the narrators. Do you want more adventures? Show some love to our YouTube channel with a subscription and a like, and if you want exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting for you with open arms. Chapter 26 System Tasks. Although it seemed like Tsujima had a lot to say to Liang Yue, now was clearly not a good time, so the two then discussed where to go next. But just at that moment, Ms. Shizuka Miracle, who had been acting like a cute mascot, suddenly spoke up. She said that they had to go back to the faculty office, because almost all the keys to the Fujimi Academy's vehicles were kept there. Hearing this, the two thought about it and agreed. As the only male in the temporary team, Liang Yue naturally took on the task of leading the way. However, for safety's sake, he also took out a thick cedar shield from his storage space without any guilt. 6 pieces of wood plus 1 piece of iron, in exchange for the ability to block almost 100% of all enemy attacks in close combat. Coupled with a thick iron sword in his hand, he was almost invincible against the scattered zombies in the corridor. A sword strike to the head of the target would either crack it open or directly behead it. A key was that after slashing more than 20 zombies, Liang Yue was only slightly out of breath, and his face was still a normal color. His exaggerated stamina stunned Tsujima and Shizuka Miracle behind him. Of course, while slashing zombies and clearing the way, Liang Yue didn't forget to squat down and absorb soul power. Although the two women behind him were puzzled, they didn't ask much. Following the information in his mind about the inside of the academy, he didn't stray from the path along the way. He even had time to check the system tasks. Main quest: quantity produces quality. Quest requirements: kill 10,000 dead body zombies in this world with a one-hit kill. The quest time limit is 1 month. Quest rewards: 500 points, 1 extra draw chance. After completing the quest quantity, each excess one-hit kill will affect the reward. If the quest fails, the host will be stranded in this world for 10 years. Current kill count: 34. Side quest: close protection. Quest requirements: send the protagonist group to a safe place, ensuring that at least 5 people survive before the host leaves this world. Quest rewards: 300 points, 1 item upgrade. Treasure charm. That's it, only these 2 quests. 10,000 zombies. Is it treating me like a monster slaying machine, with a horizontal sweep of his sword, deflecting the zombie in front of him, and beheading it again? Liang Yue couldn't help but complain inwardly, but his heart was solemn. The close protection quest was easy to understand. Now that he had been sent to Fujimi Academy, it meant that he would definitely be associated with the plot characters. Otherwise, if it was just purely killing zombies, it seemed like he could do that anywhere. As for the quest requirements, they were not difficult. With his McGamer abilities, he indeed had a unique advantage in terms of survival. Item upgrade. Treasure charm. It looks quite tempting in comparison. The main quest, which was purely a test of quantity and required a headshot kill on the target, was the most troublesome. However, since this was the system's requirement after more than half a month of target practice, he naturally knew that using firearms was undoubtedly the most efficient choice to complete this task quickly and safely. However, the noise generated by using guns was too loud, and even with a silencer, the effect wouldn't be too good. In the current environment, it would be easier to attract a large number of zombies to attack. Don't be fooled by how awesome he seems right now, able to sweep and push his way through with a sword and a shield in front of him. This was only under the condition that the number of zombies was not large. Along the way, the 3 people in the team had maintained a certain tacit understanding, which was to avoid making any unnecessary noise, so as not to attract more trouble. Even Ms. Shizuka Miracle, who was a pure natural airhead, was silently following this rule. But even so, the task of 10,000 zombies was not so easy to achieve. System: how long will this playing experience last? 1 month as expected. The time limit for the main quest is the time limit for this apocalypse world, a total of 30 days. Calculating it this way, I have to kill at least 340 zombies every day. This is just the minimum quest requirement. If I have any ambition, this number will have to be greatly increased. I don't know how much extra I have to complete to affect the quest rewards. Using a gun to kill monsters is easy, but I also need enough bullets. 10,000 bullets in the storage space are definitely not enough. I need to find more supplements and equipment as soon as possible, and to complete the quest requirements, I have to kill with 1 hit, which means I have to headshot them. Weapons like machine guns have a fast rate of fire, and I don't know if they count simply using a sword to slash is straightforward. Besides consuming a bit of iron, it can also exercise my body. It's just a bit more dangerous and tiring. Liang Yue clearly knew that the quest requirement of 10,000 zombies was a test given to him by the system to some extent. It was even more about him making a choice in his future development path, whether to use a gun for long-range headshots, or to use a sword for close combat monster slaying. No matter which option he chose next, the sheer number of one-hit kills, at least in the tens of thousands, would inevitably allow him to take a solid step on that path. Along the way, the three of them smoothly entered the teaching building from a side corridor, and then went all the way to the faculty office along the stairs. At this time, the teaching building was already dead silent. Both the corridors and stairwells were covered in blood. Twisted corpses and skeletons were scattered on the ground, and severed limbs were common. A strong bloody smell permeated the entire space, making people want to vomit. The once beautiful and vibrant campus had now become a living hell. Liang Yue thought about the time he came to this world before, and found that it might not even be half an hour ago. The faces of the two women behind him were also not very good looking, always frowning slightly, with a faint look of sadness in their eyes, but they were actually very strong. At least, walking in this environment full of corpses, the two of them hadn't vomited on the spot. Even Liang Yue, a transmigrator who had already been trained in the mech world, felt a slight itching in his throat after smelling the blood in the air, as if something was about to surge out of his chest. Just then, a shrill scream suddenly came from the direction of the corner of the stairs, and the helplessness and fear in it immediately startled the three of them. After looking at each other, they all sped up at the same time. Chapter 27. The protagonists gather together. Unsurprisingly, when Liang Yue and his group of three arrived at the source of the screaming, they ran head-on into another team of two. Besides them, there was also another man and woman present. The man was short, fat, and unattractive, with a simple and honest face, a medium-length parted hairstyle, and black-rimmed glasses. The woman had pink hair styled in twin pigtails. If Liang Yue remembered correctly, this twin-tailed girl should be the strategist of the main characters group, Sayatakaji. At this moment, this young lady from a Japanese right-wing party leader's family was receiving a baptism of blood. The chainsaw in her hand was deeply embedded in the chest of a zombie, and drops of blood mixed with fragments of internal organs spurted into the air like a celestial maiden scattering flowers, drenching the young lady in blood. Excessive fright and embarrassment caused Sayatakaji to break down on the spot, and the sharp screams came from her mouth. As for the unremarkable fatty on the other side, is he also a protagonist? Liang Yue, who knew the plot well, naturally knew that this person was Koto Hirano, although he had some doubts in his mind. If one were to trace the background of this man who looked like a fat otaku, he seemed to be more qualified to be the protagonist than himself. It is said that Koto Hirano's father was a gem merchant who was on his way to Amsterdam to purchase goods before the crisis broke out. His mother was a fashion designer in Paris. His grandmother was a famous violinist. His grandfather was a captain of an international shipping line. As for Koto Hirano himself, he was a passionate military enthusiast who, at a young age, had received professional military training from the American private military organization Blackwater through certain connections, and was proficient in the use of general firearms. In terms of marksmanship, Liang Yue might not even be able to compare to him. In comparison, the other man and woman who ran into them seemed a little more ordinary. The man was named Takashi Kimuro, and he had a handsome, rebellious face. According to the plot, he should be the absolute male protagonist of this world, although he was not as skilled as the fat Koto Hirano in survival skills, who told him to be so handsome. The remaining woman was named Rie Miyamoto, Takashi Kimuro's childhood sweetheart and a member of the school's kendo club. She had once promised the protagonist in her childhood that they would always be together when they grew up, but later she met Hisashi Yagu, who was more excellent in emotional intelligence, IQ, combat power, and social skills. So she decisively abandoned the protagonist and went with the other party. As a result, for a considerable period of time thereafter, Takashi Kimuro, as the protagonist, was always brooding about this later. After the dead body crisis broke out, Hisashi Yagu was infected with a virus and turned into a zombie, and she immediately threw herself into the protagonist's arms. In his previous life, many people did not think highly of Rie Miyamoto because of this, believing that this woman was too realistic. But little did they know that this was actually the personality and mentality of a normal high school girl. Whether it was looking for a more excellent partner or choosing to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages in a crisis, it was just normal human nature. In comparison, whether it was the weak but highly skilled military otaku Koto Hirano, that tsundere and highly intelligent Sayatakaji, the cute and busty Shizuka Marikawa, or the battle maniac Sikobir Sujima, they seem to be the real outliers. Then what am I? With a vertical slash of his sword, he knocked the last zombie in the vicinity to the ground, turned around, and looked at Sayatakaji, who was gradually recovering under the comfort of the three girls beside her. Liang Yue then shook his hands, and immediately put the sword and shield in his left and right hands back into the storage space, his face not red and his heart not beating, and slowly walked back to the middle of the crowd. Such a handsome demeanor immediately attracted the shock of Takashi Kimuro and Kota Hirano, who had been observing him, especially the little fatty, staring blankly at his hands, his mouth wide open, as if he had seen some suddenly descending god, unable to wake up for a long time. Compared to Soichiro Ishii, the bookworm extra who only flashed by in the original plot, Soichiro Ishii, after being replaced by Liang Yue, was naturally completely different. Moreover, compared to Takashi Kimuro's protagonist handsome face, Liang Yue's prince face was not bad at all. The government has issued an emergency announcement that the self-defense forces have gone to various places for deployment. Currently, more than 10,000 infected patients have appeared in Yue County, but the situation is still deteriorating. Extremely serious violent incidents are taking place outdoors, covering the entire country. Please stay at home as much as possible and do not go out, waiting for rescue from the government. This abnormal situation is rapidly spreading throughout the United States. Currently, the government and the military do not have effective means to control it. The head of the U.S. government has abandoned the White House. The government functional departments have been temporarily deployed on offshore aircraft carriers. At the same time, this transfer of authority also implies the possibility of using nuclear weapons. On the Russian side, communication signals have been stopped and cannot be connected temporarily. Beijing has fallen into a sea of fire. London is currently maintaining law and order. Large-scale looting incidents have occurred in cities such as Paris and Rome. One bad news after another came one after another, accompanied by chaotic real-time pictures, all indicating that the current situation was deteriorating sharply. For a time, the atmosphere in the office seemed unusually heavy, and everyone's faces were not very good-looking. Unconsciously, they also began to worry about their future. What's going on? It was fine this morning. Why did the world become like this after only a few hours? There should still be safe places in the world, right? As long as we get through this period of time, we can go back to the way things were before. Impossible. How could it be? What is causing this situation now is a large-scale outbreak of plague. The same infectious disease is prevalent all over the world. Think about the Spanish flu in 1918, with more than 600 million infected people and a death toll of more than 50 million. The current situation seems to be even more serious. Besides, the recent new type of flu didn't already cause a big riot. If that's the case, this seems very similar to the Black Death of the 14th century. Liang Yue had actually known the information that everyone around him was discussing for a long time, so at this time, he was not immersed in sorrow like the others, but kept walking around the various desks, collecting all kinds of useful supplies: MP3, MP4, PSP, mobile phones, loudspeakers, various snacks. Ishii-san, it doesn't seem very good to move other people's things without permission, especially those electronic products. Most of them should be illegal items confiscated by the teacher, but even though they are illegal items, they will still have to be returned in the future. The television signal was temporarily interrupted. Unknowingly, Liang Yue seemed to have become the focus of everyone in the office. Kota Hirano also came to his side at this time and kindly reminded him after seeing his actions, but just as he finished speaking, he immediately realized that something was wrong. Obviously, in the apocalyptic environment where zombies were rampant, I'm afraid no one would care about these things that were once used to pass the time. After all, their original owners were probably gone. But even so, after hearing the little fatty's words, Liang Yue still explained, according to previous observations, those resurrected dead bodies should not have all of human senses. Vision and pain are missing, and smell cannot be seen for the time being, but their hearing is very sensitive. Collecting these devices that can make sounds in advance can divert those monsters in certain situations. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28: Unified Stance. So, what's your take on this crisis? Across from him, Sayatakaji stood among the group, arms crossed, asking Liang Yue. Behind her small, Transparent glasses were eyes that held a hint of scrutiny my take? The birth of this crisis is probably due to the global flu we had before. You could even call it a plague, but the source is worth exploring. I'd guess it's related to those chains of dormant, deadly viruses hidden within our human genes. The flu might just be the trigger that caused the virus to erupt. Liang Yue didn't hide anything upon hearing this and directly stated his inner speculation. Similarly, the stray cats on campus don't seem to deliberately avoid or show fear towards the dead bodies, as if they were watching a stage play. As he spoke, Liang Yue reached out and pulled open the blinds, pointing to the cats basking in the sun on the campus flower beds. The others gathered around to look and found that the situation was indeed as he described. I guess they don't care about the dead bodies around them because they don't sense any danger from them. Additionally, I believe that this global flu pandemic shouldn't have appeared out of nowhere. It must have some kind of source. If it was a naturally formed flu, then it's unlikely that it would break out simultaneously in various regions around the world, and even less likely that it would become a trigger at the same time, thus triggering the viral chains within human genes. Are you saying that this crisis was man-made? Sayatakaji now had a serious expression on her face, unconsciously pinching her chin as she tried hard to think, attempting to refute his words, but after careful thought, she couldn't find any obvious loopholes excluding alien invasions and the awakening of the Earth's will. I think the possibility of a man-made crisis is very high. After speaking, Liang Yue sat down on the desk behind him and took out a bag of chocolate from the spoils next to him. Chewing slowly. So, what should we do now? After hearing this guy's words, Rie Miyamoto, whose face was obviously not very good, asked with a heavy heart. Of course, it's self-preservation. Liang Yue's words immediately choked everyone there. Sayatakaji, with her strong tsundere attributes, rolled her eyes, but before she could retort, she was interrupted by someone. But self-preservation and self-preservation are not the same. For ordinary people like us, the best way now is to find a safe place to hide with a certain amount of force. But if we rise to the national level, their ideas become complicated. In addition to solving those monsters, they also need to guard against certain hostile countries that can threaten them. Are you saying that the current situation may trigger a nuclear war? War is unlikely. That's like putting your own life on the line, but in this time of crisis, those major powers will at least fire a few and destroy some sensitive targets. This is to deter the enemy countries and show their determination to fight. So, unfortunately, our island nation is located in the central area surrounded by major powers, and it has always been the front line for a certain country to deter other certain countries. Does Ishii-kun mean that we will be nuked by other countries? A nuclear strike is unlikely, but I bet the domestic military bases and the self-defense forces definitely won't be able to hold on. Our Takaname city is okay, it's just a satellite city dependent on Tokyo. And there aren't many troops stationed here. It shouldn't be targeted directly, but the electromagnetic pulse generated by the nuclear explosion will definitely affect us here. Don't we still have anti-aircraft missiles? Those things don't have a high hit rate anyway, but why should we be? Alright. Now is not the time to say these things. Let's discuss the countermeasures for leaving. While everyone in the office was talking at once, Takashi Kimuro, as the protagonist, finally stood up at this time, clenched his fists, and interrupted everyone's discussion with a look of bravery and decisiveness. In that instant, this man once again became the focus of the crowd. Liang Yue looked at his appearance from the side and found it quite amusing. Keep pretending. No matter how much you pretend, you're still a gigolo who can't even keep his girlfriend. Thinking of Hisashi Egu, who was killed by the plot before, although his face was not as handsome as this one, he was also a handsome guy, and he was more mature and reliable in terms of force. He was the captain of the judo club of Fujimi Academy, and he was also at the top of his class in academics. If it weren't for being too superstitious about judo techniques, and being bitten on the arm by a zombie that turned his head, there would be no chance for Takashi Kimuro to act like a hero at this time. No countermeasures are needed. The only way for us now is to take the school bus to leave here. The question is, where do we go after we leave? Looking at the people in front of him, Liang Yue opened his mouth almost without thinking. Although in terms of safety, he actually favored the Fujimi Academy in front of him. The school itself is located in the suburbs of Takaname City, on a hill, surrounded by walls. As long as we find a way to deal with the zombies inside the campus, there are much fewer, definitely safer than in the city. However, Liang Yue obviously wouldn't choose to stay here. After all, there are more zombies in the city. Where to go? It goes without saying. Of course, go home. After hearing Liang Yue's words, Takashi Kimuro immediately looked solemn, raised his sword-like eyebrows, clenched the metal baseball bat in his hand, with a resolute and decisive look, worthy of entrusting his life. Rie Miyamoto and Saya Takagi, who were next to him, looked at him with a hint of starlight in their eyes at this moment. Seeing this, Liang Yue naturally wouldn't sing a different tune at this time, so he also jumped off the table very cooperatively. Then let me lead the way in front. As he spoke, his left and right hands suddenly shook, and the wooden shield and iron sword suddenly appeared out of thin air, held in his hands. Then, in the mysterious gazes of the people behind him, he walked towards the office door. Will follow. Siko-senpai, we'll leave the rear to you. Takashi Kimuro quickly reacted at this time. His eyes flickered, and he immediately turned his head to instruct Siko Birsujima and the others. Which way should we go? If you go to the parking lot, the main entrance is the closest. Try to bring the other survivors. Got it. Chapter 29. Zombies blocking the road. Konchak. The sliding door opened, and in the corridor outside the office, 3 zombies had somehow already arrived. Then, the zombie let out a low growl. Its wrinkled, iron-blue face turned in the direction of the sound, and it began to walk towards them. Seeing this, Liang Yue wasted no words, raising a sword and slashing at the nearest zombie with a soft poof sound. The iron sword sliced through half of the zombie's skull with almost no resistance. Clack. At the same time, a distinct mechanical, pneumatic sound came from behind him, and immediately after, the zombie beside him fell to the ground. Even without looking, Liang Yue knew that it must have been the little fatty, Hirano Toda, who had taken it down with his nail gun. Hey, Kimuro. Takashi, not wanting to be left out, hurriedly took a few small steps forward, bravely putting all his strength into a heavy swing at the remaining 3rd zombie. Unfortunately, the young man's aim seemed a bit too far off, heading straight for the zombie's ribs. Even so, the powerful force still sent the zombie flying to the side. Although he didn't directly kill the target, it could no longer pose any obstacle to the group. Subsequently, Liang Yue led the way, jogging at a pace that wasn't too fast, but definitely not slow either. The scattered zombies in the corridor posed no threat to their main character group, and they were quickly cleared away with their mutual cooperation. A rare understanding seemed to have formed between the 3 leading men, covering each other, yet also with a hint of competition. Enthusiastic and with growing momentum, perhaps that was the best description of their state at that moment. And so, in just over a minute, the group had pushed all the way to a side corridor of the teaching building, and not far ahead, they would reach the 2nd floor of the main teaching building. Okay, it was a bit of a detour, but it also reflected the size of Fujimi High School. Let's make it clear beforehand, don't get bogged down in fighting later, dodge if you can, just get through smoothly. Siko Birsujima, ever meticulous, seemed to have noticed the somewhat heated atmosphere in the group, and stepped forward to remind them as they were about to descend the stairs. Saya Takagi, equally cautious, glared fiercely at the little fatty beside her as she spoke. Those guys are indeed only sensitive to sound, but their strength is enough to break through ordinary doors, and once caught, it will be difficult to escape, so, be careful. Kaya. Just then, a scream suddenly came from the spiral staircase below. Someone. The group was startled at first, and after exchanging glances, they didn't hesitate to quickly run down the stairs. After rounding 2 flights of stairs, a group of 5 survivors came into their view at this moment. This wild team was in the middle of the staircase, surrounded by 7 or 8 zombies above and below. Their situation precarious, and they looked like they were about to be wiped out. Seeing this, Kimuro Takashi and the others took 3 steps into, rushing forward to the rescue. Hirano Toda stood at the top of the stairs, holding his nail gun, aiming and firing at the zombies below. Clack. Clack clack. The little fatty's hit rate was indeed not low, and in just a few shots, he had already cleared out 3 of the outer zombies. By this time, Siko Birsujima and the others had also arrived, wielding their respective weapons, and in no time at all, they had rescued the besieged group. However, even after successfully rescuing these 3 men and 2 women, Liang Yue didn't feel much relief at this moment. The guy was looking at one of the men with a constipated expression. He was a somewhat weak-looking boy with an iron fork in his hand, and even though there were no zombies around him at this moment, he still seemed to be trembling. However, despite his cowardly appearance, according to the plot's development, the trouble he would cause was not small at all. Just watch, I'm not going to save him when the time comes. After a while, the group finally entered the main teaching building from the side building, and then arrived inside the corridor on the 2nd floor, silently gathering at the corner of the stairs. Below was the hall of the main teaching building. At this moment, it was full of zombies without sound to track them. Having lost their target, the zombies seemed to have lost their motivation to move, and could only wander aimlessly in that limited space. Twisted and strangely shaped corpses were scattered at their feet. A thick smell of blood permeated the air, and patches of bloodstains presented a cruel beauty under the setting sun. Watching the scene of the zombies wandering below, a solemn atmosphere before escaping to safety spread invisibly throughout the team. Hey, didn't you say that these guys only react to sound? Since they can't see, then we don't need to hide at all. Sayatakaji, her face full of curiosity, grabbed the railing and looked down, while lowering her voice to remind everyone. Then please, Takaji, prove it to me. Upon hearing this, Kimuro Takashi subconsciously tightened his grip on the metal bat in his hand, and glared back at the twin-eyed beauty, causing her to shrink her head back. Staying here all the time is not a solution. It would be troublesome if we were surrounded by these things at this time, Shikobir Tsujima said, frowning. Then we can only rush out from the middle door, Rie Miyamoto also said from the side at this time. But although the little girl's words were full of enthusiasm, her body remained sitting on the steps without moving. Obviously, she was not an action type. Okay, I'll go over and lure those zombies away first. You guys watch carefully for the opportunity, and go down quickly when there's a chance. Seeing the worried looks on everyone's faces, Liang Yue also took the initiative to stand up. But this time, after all, this guy had said before in the office that he would be responsible for leading the way. I'll do it. Shikobir Tsujima also stood up, but was interrupted by Liang Yue before she could finish her words. Siko-senpai is responsible for the safety of the team at the rear. After saying that, Liang Yue went down the stairs on his own. Why don't we go together? At this time, Kimuro Takashi, the protagonist, also took a few steps forward and said, but as soon as the words left his mouth, he was pulled back by Rie Miyamoto on the side. Liang Yue simply waved his hand without turning around, too lazy to respond. Silently arriving in the lobby on the first floor, it seemed that the zombies' hearing hadn't reached a meticulous level, and they didn't react at all to his arrival. Still wandering around foolishly, Liang Yue wasn't nervous at all at this time, and facing a zombie walking towards him, this guy even had the leisure to approach it and breathe on its face. The result was still no reaction. Alright. It seems that these are indeed the most basic type of zombies. After making this judgment, Liang Yue completely lost interest in this thing, and reached out to pick up a sneaker that someone had lost on the ground. He threw it casually at the metal storage box on one side of the hall. Chapter 30. Thank you for the award, senior sister. Duong. The sound of the impact wasn't loud, but in the quiet first floor lobby, it seemed unusually piercing. Almost as soon as the sound rang out, the zombies in the lobby, as if summoned, all turned towards the storage cabinet, reaching out their hands, searching for the non-existent prey. In just a short while, a large area of the passageway leading to the main entrance was cleared. Seeing this, Liang Yue immediately went to the glass door, gently pushed it open, and the path to the campus was unobstructed. In the stairwell not far away, Takashi Kimuro, Sayatakaji, and others, who were constantly paying attention to the situation in the hall, also quietly arrived, all holding their breath, trying to lighten their footsteps. Looking cautious and careful, everything was proceeding smoothly in silence. However, at this moment, the unnamed, meek-looking guy whom Liang Yue had glanced at a few more times earlier, just like in the original plot, made a contribution. Clang. An ear-piercing metallic clanging sound rang out almost without warning in the teaching hall. Takashi Kimuro, Rie Miyamoto, and the others were startled upon hearing the sound and quickly turned back to look, only to find that the source of the sound was the meek guy accidentally hitting the iron railing of the stairs with a steel fork in his hand. Now that was great. Not only did the zombies that Liang Yue had lured aside with a shoe turn their heads and come towards the center of the hall, but even those zombies that were originally wandering around the campus also began to flock towards the entrance in groups. I didn't do it on purpose. Faced with this sudden change, the meek guy's face immediately filled with panic, and then he quickly and timidly defended himself. But at this point, who would be willing to listen to him? Everyone strode forward and ran wildly towards the gate. Liang Yue, on the other hand, had naturally foreseen the occurrence of this event. At this moment, he had already taken out a Nokia hardshell phone from the backpack he had grabbed from behind. He tapped a few times on it, and soon found an unknown song, turned the volume to the maximum. Afterwards, it fell to the ground with a scattering of pink petals, naturally bumping and scraping in the process, but fortunately, the phone was of good quality, and the music did not stop. After slashing down the zombie beside him with a sword, Liang Yue then reminded everyone, take advantage of the moment, hurry up and leave soon. The sound of the cell phone music successfully attracted the attention of a large number of zombies, and at least half of the dead bodies that were originally heading towards the teaching building were diverted. Looking back, at this time, looking at the direction of the main entrance behind him, except for the meek guy who was a bit slow, everyone else had basically run out. Even Takashi Kimuro and Rie Miyamoto, who had taken the initiative to guard the door to hold back the zombies, were now running wildly towards the front of the team, waving the weapons in their hands and fighting fiercely with the zombies blocking the way. Then looking at the meat guy at this time, who had fallen behind. He obviously realized that the situation was not good. Liang Yue's move of throwing the phone, although successfully, attracted the attention of a large number of zombies, but did not include those in the hall. The continuous music, but more aroused the zombies in the hall to come and block the road. So the meat guy gritted his teeth fiercely under the crisis of life and death, mustered the courage in his chest, and quickly ran forward through the pile of zombies with a steel fork in his hand. But soon, his wave of divine operation appeared just as he was about to escape. The long steel fork in his hand once again helped the reverse, and the horizontally held metal pipe collided fiercely with the door frames on both sides. With a muffled sound of dang, his entire person was immediately bounced back into the pile of corpses behind him by the strong rebounding force on the steel fork. Immediately afterwards, a desperate scream rang out in the hall, and could not stop for a long time. What a talent! It was not until this time that Liang Yue took his eyes back from the other person, shook his head with some emotion, and turned to chase after the team behind him. Before he had run a few steps, he found another person in the team at a corner, who had been surrounded by several zombies. One of them even opened its big mouth and bit the man's arm directly. The intense pain instantly made him lose the strength to resist, and then he was knocked to the ground by a pile of zombies. But even at this time, the man still did not forget to remind his girlfriend not far away, using his last strength to tell her to run away quickly. And his girlfriend, at this time, also ignored Sayatakaji's obstruction, insisted on breaking free, and then ran towards the man with a dazed expression. But just as she approached, she was bitten on the neck by another zombie. Why bother? Liang Yue finally arrived one step too late after rushing all the way, and looking at the two people who were being devoured on all sides by the group of corpses, he suddenly felt a bit of irritability in his heart. But then, he continued to walk towards Sayatakaji, Shizuka Marikawa, and others who were looking surprised and sad at this moment. Liang Yue's footsteps were almost silent, and the zombies blocking the way all regarded him as nothing. Even if he reached out and pushed them aside, they would not look back at him, and just continued to walk towards the pair of lovers behind him, who were already silent without knowing it. This somewhat creepy chewing sound and bone-gnawing sound still echoed in the air, causing Liang Yue to frown. Why are you so disobedient? I have already demonstrated it so clearly to you before. Looking at Shizuka Marikawa and others in front of him with sad expressions, Liang Yue also felt a bit of resentment at this time, but now is not the time to complain. He took out another cell phone from his bag again, pressed the music switch, threw it towards the flower bed in the distance, and a large number of zombies were immediately attracted by the music. Even those zombies that were originally surrounding the school bus in the parking lot were now heading towards the direction of the sound in unison. This made Takashi Kimuro, Rie Miyamoto, and the others, who had originally planned to fight the zombies head-on, stop there with bewildered expressions. Let's go, it's getting late now, we have to find another place to live before dark. Looking up at the blood-red sunset in the sky, Liang Yue sighed softly, reached out and put his arm around Shizuka Marikawa's delicate waist, and then pushed the blonde beauty towards the direction of the bus. After a tense operation, everyone got on the bus one after another, while Liang Yue still stayed at the door to hold back the zombies. And Rie Miyamoto, who was holding a wooden sword, made the same choice. Ishikun is really, unexpectedly reliable. Senpai overpraises me. Chapter 31. Shido Koichi was accompanied by the roar of the engine. The bus started. Liang Yue was standing on the steps at the door of the bus, holding the door with one hand and looking in the direction of the teaching building. Knowing the plot well, he naturally knew that they were not the only survivors on this campus. Another team, or rather a survivor who occupies an important part of the plot, will also appear at this time. Save us. Wait a minute, please don't leave yet. Sure enough, the power of the director's script is really incomparably powerful. When Liang Yue looked around for a long time and couldn't see anyone, and thought that there had been some unexpected changes in the middle, and was about to pull the door and leave, a group of people fleeing in embarrassment suddenly appeared at this time. That's Seiko Sujima from Class 3A, right? Seiko, the senior student, also came to the door at this time. Through the car window glass, even from a distance, she could easily recognize one of the people in the team. Miyamoto Rie, who was sitting in the seat next to her, frowned immediately when she heard the words, and looked at the approaching team with a displeased expression. Should I kill him in advance? He seems to be a disaster. Looking at the middle-parted glasses guy who was within 50 meters of the bus, and after realizing that there were few zombies around, started pretending to command his companions to go first. Liang Yue couldn't help but touch his chin at this time. His mind was full of thoughts at the same time. A dispute arose among the people in the car because of this Miyamoto Rie, who originally had a feud with that Kimuro Takashi in campus life, firmly opposed rescuing him at this time. But under the current situation, it is obviously impossible for the people in the team to leave a survivor outside the car alone. You will regret it. Looking at Kimuro Takashi beside her, who didn't support her opinion, Miyamoto Rie said resolutely at this moment. Afterwards, this woman began to observe Koichi Shido, who had walked safely towards the bus, through the car window, her face full of resentment and vigilance. In comparison, the situation that Liang Yue saw next to him was undoubtedly more comprehensive, similar to the development in the original plot. A four-eyed guy who was still holding 2 books in his hand while running, accidentally fell to the ground when he asked Shido for help in front of him. He was greeted with a kick right in the face. In an instant, the glasses shattered, and glass shards filled his face. This four-eyed guy couldn't control himself, his body trembling, and his miserable cries were endless. The zombies that had been approaching from all around were naturally attracted by his voice. Soon, this four-eyed guy became a dish in the mouths of the zombies, and Shido in front of him had already returned to his calm appearance at this time, walking unhurriedly towards the direction of the bus. This person is really ruthless. Liang Yue saw all of this in his eyes, but he didn't have much to say about this person's behavior. After all, it is already the end of the world, and all kinds of regulations are already in vain. In order to survive, sometimes you really need to use all means. Whether you can adhere to the correct moral principles like in the peaceful era before the end of the world can only depend on the individual's conduct and circumstances. As a female driver, don't look at Ms. Shizuka Marikawa's usual silly and sweet appearance. But once she gets in the car, that style can only be described as wild. After stepping on the accelerator to the end, she doesn't let go at all. Under the rampage, the zombies blocking the front were crushed into a pile of minced meat. The people in the car were all looking like they were sitting on pins and needles, and everyone's faces were full of panic. They held tightly to the fixed objects next to them, and didn't dare to relax in the slightest, for fear that they would be thrown out of the window if they were not careful. In just a moment, the school bus had already sped to the school gate facing the closed iron gate. Ms. Marikawa didn't hesitate at all, and rushed straight over with the ups and downs. She just made a crooked turn, and then disappeared in a puff of smoke with the people on the car on the long winding mountain road between the gallop. Seeing that Fujimi Academy had gradually disappeared behind them, the people in the car breathed a sigh of relief at the same time, and began to rest. However, things often don't go as expected. When the crisis of survival is temporarily gone, some small thoughts that were originally suppressed begin to grow again. Excuse me, is Ms. Sikobir Tsujima the captain of your team? Koichi Shido walked slowly from the back row seat at this time, looking at Sikobir Tsujima, who was wiping her wooden sword with a smile on his face, and asked, as a kendo practitioner, Siko's eyesight has always been very good, so naturally, Siko was no exception to what Liang Yue could see before. Therefore, facing Shido's question, Siko subconsciously didn't give him a good look, and continued to wipe the wooden sword without raising her head. There is no captain here, everyone is just helping each other in order to survive. When Koichi Shido heard the words, his mind moved, and the smile on his face became even more cheerful. That's not okay. In order to survive, there must be a captain to take on all the action arrangements, so that our team can be more united. After listening to Shido's words, Miyamoto Rie almost immediately understood the other party's intention, and then once again reminded Kimuro Takashi beside her with a vigilant expression. Wait and see, I said, you will definitely regret saving him. Liang Yue was not interested in the discussion of the people in the car at this time. What he was concerned about was naturally to find a place to rest as soon as possible, and then start the monster killing mode as soon as possible. You must know that the hunting task of 10,000 zombies is really not light, but for the time being, I still have to follow the plot for a while. After all, I still have a mission to protect the protagonist. Thinking of this, Liang Yue felt a burst of irritability in his heart, and subconsciously pursed his lips, leaned on the seat behind him, and unconsciously cast his eyes out the window. At this time, the speeding bus had gradually driven out of the dense forest area. After turning a hill, the view in front of him suddenly became clear. A city building with a not very large scale suddenly appeared in front of his eyes, and wisps of thick smoke were rising sporadically from various corners of the city. In the distance, there were faint lights and explosions spreading, but these scenes were not valued by him. What Liang Yue noticed first was actually the endless sea that was reflecting the afterglow of the setting sun. Takanosu City is a fictional city in the manga, but it is also located within the Tokyo metropolitan area. There are more than 30 million people here, so no matter how you hide, the land will not be too safe. I'm fine, I can protect myself, but Ms. Shizuka and the others, it's best to send them overseas. Chapter 32 The Evil and Crazy Fool. Just as Liang Yue sat by the window, blankly thinking about nothing, the argument among the people in the carriage seemed to have reached a fever pitch. A blonde-haired teenager from another team jumped out for some unknown reason, spouting a series of complaints and arrogant ramblings, first complaining about why they had to enter the city, and then directly targeting Takashi Kimuro, who was standing to the side. However, just as this blondie clenched his fist, about to punch the protagonist, Rie Miyamoto suddenly erupted, using the skills she had learned in the Kendo Club, and with a series of combos, firmly knocked the opponent to the ground. Koichi Shido on the opposite side also took the opportunity to stand up, smoothing things over while subtly mocking Rie Miyamoto's actions as undermining unity, and then bringing up the so-called team leader proposal again. Throughout the entire process, he displayed a standard smiling tiger demeanor, not forgetting to play office politics even in this precarious doomsday. Rie Miyamoto, who originally didn't get along with this guy and had secretly been at odds with him, immediately became exasperated and, in a fit of pique, actually abandoned the vehicle and left. When Liang Yue came back to his senses, he happened to see his childhood sweetheart, Takashi Kimuro, chasing after her. Beep. Just then, a speeding train suddenly came from afar, its movements erratic and its style unpredictable. Looking just like someone running after downing 3 bottles of vodka wherever it passed, it charged straight ahead, swaying from side to side. Liang Yue's gaze passed through the car window, through the darkening sky outside, vaguely seeing a chaotic scene inside that large passenger vehicle. At some point, zombies must have invaded the vehicle, and the passengers inside were unable to stop them, resulting in the zombies multiplying after being bitten. Now, the passenger bus was filled with surging corpses, stumbling and staggering towards them. Ms. Kyoko, get out of the way. Under the reminder of Sikobir Sujima, the female driver, Shizuka Marikawa, immediately slammed on the accelerator and frantically spun the steering wheel, finally successfully stopping the car on the other side of the intersection with a beautiful drift. The zombie bus that was rushing madly, at this moment, also crashed into a small freight truck on the roadside in a daze, instantly losing its balance in an instant. This couple and the entire team were separated. Kimuro-kun, are you alright? Siko immediately ran to the burning train and shouted into the tunnel. No problem for now. But the road is blocked, we can only act separately. Let's meet at the East District Police Station, Takashi Kimuro shouted towards this side through the flames. What time? 7 o'clock in the evening. If we can't meet today, then at the same time tomorrow. As soon as the two finished talking, the flames on the train suddenly flared up, and zombies wrapped in flames climbed out of the car one after another. But before they could take a few steps, they fell down directly. It looks like the flames burned out their brains. Let's go. It's going to explode here soon. Since we've already agreed on a meeting place, we'll see you then. Liang Yue also walked down at this time, taking Sikobir Sujima back to the car. At this time, the sun had completely set, and the street lights on both sides of the road had been lit up one after another, temporarily dispelling the darkness. It's just that I don't know how long it can illuminate in this doomsday environment without personnel maintenance under the night. Chuangzishi City was not peaceful at this time. After temporarily shaking off the pursuit of the zombies, the school bus that Liang Yue and others were riding in was not able to drive too far. Similar to their choice, many people in the city were also riding in vehicles at this time, nervously lining up on the road, in order to be able to go to a safe place as soon as possible. Rows of vehicles were queuing to pass, making the traffic in the city very congested for a whole hour. The school bus where Liang Yue and others were located had just slowly moved forward about 1 kilometer. Obviously, under this circumstance, something must have happened on the road ahead, either a traffic accident, or simply a road closure by the police or something going on like this. They would not be able to reach the East District Police Station within the agreed time, at least not today. Since this crisis occurred, it seems that 3 or 4 hours have passed. It doesn't seem long, but the people in the team have been tense throughout the entire process, plus they had previously experienced several fierce fights with the zombies, so at this time, everyone was already physically and mentally exhausted, and hungry. During this process, Koichi Shido in the carriage seemed to be full of energy and full of vitality. Almost every once in a while, this gentleman would preach to the good men and women who came with him in the back row, giving his team leader election speech, and those men and women, at this time, also selectively forgot about the dangerous doomsday environment around them, and wholeheartedly absorbed the brainwashing rhetoric spread by this purple-haired middle-parted man. After a few times like this, They all became infatuated and intoxicated. Liang Yue was now watching the other party's performance with great interest, just like watching an Amway live show. Just like that, he held the back of his head with both hands, and bit on a lollipop he had scavenged from the office, savoring it with relish. Knowing the plot well, he naturally knew that, according to the director's script arrangement, if there were no accidents, they would probably have to spend a whole night on this road. It wasn't until the next morning that everyone finally woke up, chose to abandon the school bus, parted ways with Shido and others, and then went on their way alone. Liang Yue, on the other hand, would naturally not be so foolish as to wait here for a night before acting. Besides wanting to find a quiet place to rest, he also had to rush to farm zombies. Thinking of this guy no longer hesitated, and suddenly stood up from his seat and came to Sikobir Sujima, Sayatakaji and others. Okay, looking at the situation, this road is already seriously congested. In that case, we might as well get off the bus early, find a place to rest, and also find some food. What do you think? I have no opinion. Rather than just staying here and waiting, it's better to go find other ways to get on the road sooner. Sayatakaji heard this, subconsciously adjusted the small glasses on the bridge of her nose, and nodded in agreement. Judging from the current situation, this urban area has not been occupied by zombies yet. I also agree to get off the bus temporarily. Sikobir Sujima on the side subconsciously looked at the congested road conditions outside the car window, and also had no objection. As for the other two, teacher Shizuka and the chubby Kauto Hirano, were obviously not very opinionated people either. Seeing that the three of them had reached an agreement, they also very happily chose to obey. It seems that the students here have formed some kind of consensus. Why, are you all planning to abandon this team and leave alone? Koichi Shido, who had been paying attention to everyone's movements, also took a few steps towards this side at this time, came to face them, and looked at everyone with a malicious look on his face. You don't have to worry about that, Mr. Shido. We have our own purposes. This is not a school trip, and we have no obligation to entangle with you. Sayatakaji crossed her arms at this time, confronting the other party indifferently. As the well-known young lady of Chuangzihashi City in front of her, she naturally didn't care about this little teacher in front of her, even if the other party also came from a certain congressman's family. If you have already made such a decision, then please do as you please, Miss Takaji. No matter what, Japan is a free country. But, as a teacher of the academy, and a medical staff member, Ms. Shizuka Marikawa, it would not be good to choose to leave the student team at this time. So, you still up? Just as Koichi Shido was wearing an evil and arrogant smile, continuing to block in front of everyone to bargain, and still seemed to have the winning ticket in hand. Liang Yue, this guy, suddenly took a few steps forward and kicked this fool from the front row to the back seat, with a hint of disdain on his face. Talking for a whole afternoon, just to be a team leader among these dozen people, with your pattern, you still want to get ahead? Chapter 33 Night Discussion. Following the overpass, the group descended via a staircase on the side of the bridge, soon arriving in a district primarily filled with snack shops and commercial buildings. What would normally be a bustling and crowded area was now desolate under the threat of the end-of-the-world crisis, with streets littered with scattered waste paper and debris. Most of the shops on both sides were tightly shut, locked from the inside. A few had even been pried open, revealing a scene of utter chaos inside. However, at this point, probably no one cared about that anymore. The shops were long deserted, the occupants having fled to who knows where. Walking through it all, Liang Yue and the others were certainly not rigid moralists who refused to adapt. Occasionally, upon finding useful supplies in some of the open shops, they would freely collect them. For example, Ms. Shizuka Marikawa, who had originally been wearing a high-class, tight-fitting miniskirt, was persuaded by the others to change into a lighter pleated skirt, swapping her leather shoes for sponge-soled sneakers. Besides that, various high-calorie snacks and candies, drinking water, all sorts of seasonings, and even the nail gun used by Koto Hirano were replenished at a medium-sized supermarket. Finally, the 3 large bags of supplies were thrown into Liang Yue's storage space in one go, under the expectant gazes of everyone to speed up their journey. They even commandeered 5 light bicycles from the roadside and quietly pedaled forward at full speed. Eventually, about half an hour later, following Sayatakaji's suggestion, the group arrived in front of an exceptionally luxurious hotel. Although the hotel was still brightly lit, the staff inside had long since fled, their whereabouts unknown. The glass doors at the entrance hadn't even been closed. Has everyone left? There must still be people hiding here, but they probably don't have the mind to care about us. Sugoi. Does that mean we can stay anywhere we want tonight? Of course not, just anywhere. It's best if we stay together, it's safer that way. Then I want to stay in the presidential suite on the top floor. After entering the room, the three girls almost simultaneously rushed to the bathroom, taking off their clothes as they went, shoes flying everywhere. Before long, the cheerful sounds of bathing could be heard from each of their bathrooms. This made Liang Yue and Koto Hirano feel a bit lewd in their hearts. However, they had the desire but not the courage. After listening for a while with awkward humor, they quickly shifted their attention to other things. Choosing an empty room, they simply took care of their personal hygiene, changed into comfortable clothes, and then Liang Yue returned to the living room, taking out the supplies that everyone had collected earlier. Finding a few ready-made boxed lunches and cartons of milk, he placed them on the table, and then took out a pre-made portion of braised beef from his storage space, placing it in the center. After showering, the refreshed three girls walked out of the rooms wearing various alluring nightgowns. Seeing the food that Liang Yue had prepared, they cheered and began to snatch and devour it with the two boys. After the meal, the relaxing moment ended, and the group sat together again, eating apples shared by someone while discussing plans for tomorrow. As far as I know, the East District Police Station isn't too far from this hotel. Even walking, it's only about 15 minutes away. So, before we meet there at 7 tomorrow night, we still have plenty of time. Let's not waste it. Liang Yue naturally knew what the goal of these high school students and their unreliable teacher was, but that was clearly very different from his own expectations. After all, he came to this apocalyptic world not just to survive. Waste it? Do you mean we should try to collect various supplies? That doesn't seem necessary. Once we cross the Abido Bridge, we'll be home soon enough. Although I don't know the circumstances of everyone's families, gathering your families at my house would be a good choice. Sure enough, as soon as Liang Yue spoke, Saya Takagi, whose family owned an estate, was the first to raise a question. The others also turned their heads at this time, wanting to hear his views. Crossing the Abido Bridge and going home are short-term goals. Although your Takagi house is sturdy, it's located inside the city. Geographically speaking, it's not even as advantageous as Fujimi High School. Liang Yue said with some regret. What? Are you saying that our Takagi house can't be defended? Saya Takagi said with some dissatisfaction. Upon hearing this, it's inevitable that it won't be able to be defended in the long run. Now is only the first day of the end of the world crisis. According to my judgment, the situation will continue to deteriorate in the next few days. Relying solely on the police force of Takanosu City will be difficult to have any constructive effect. Perhaps in the next 2 days, the zombie horde will cross the Abido Bridge and reach the other side of the city. At that time, even if the walls of your house are indestructible, as long as the zombies surround it, problems will arise inside the walls sooner or later. Liang Yue's words were not alarmist but were based on the most basic logic to analyze the current situation. Therefore, after hearing his words, everyone fell into deep thought. Even Saya Takagi, who was dissatisfied and wanted to refute, became silent at this time. Then, according to Ishii-kun's meaning, should we immediately retreat to Fujimi High School after receiving our families? After a moment, Sikobir Tsujima asked calmly from the side. At this time, Fujimi High School is just one option. In fact, the safest place in Takanosu City should be that offshore airport. As he spoke, Liang Yue reached out and pulled out a local map from the packaged supplies beside his leg, spread it out in the middle of everyone, and then pointed to a slender area built in the sea. This was the offshore airport of Takanosu City, connected to the mainland by only a cross-sea bridge, making it absolutely easy to defend and difficult to attack. However, the limitations of this area were also obvious. That is, the area itself was not large, the carrying capacity was limited, and there was not much potential for development. Moreover, as one of the well-known architectural facilities in Takanosu City, it would attract the attention of many people under the end of the world crisis, becoming a target for many survivors seeking help, whether intentionally or unintentionally. But being located within the Tokyo metropolitan area, I actually prefer to find an island. By the way, does anyone here have a boat? Chapter 34. Keep a low profile. The people present probably hadn't expected Liang Yue to think so far ahead, so everyone's face was filled with bewilderment. In the end, the topic of boats didn't even get off the ground. However, they seemed somewhat interested in the seaborne airfield that Liang Yue had mentioned earlier. So, in the time that followed, they each voiced their opinions on the matter. Saya Takagi even had the idea of immediately returning home and getting her parents to relocate their base, and so, time flew by without anyone realizing it. The group's plans quickly approached completion, but Liang Yue could clearly see a hint of lingering desire on their faces. Of course, he knew why. Although it might be a bit presumptuous, could you perhaps tell us a little about the abilities of Ishii-kun? Just then, Koto Hirano, who seemed unable to contain his curiosity any longer, scratched the back of his head and asked him somewhat shyly, leveling up is impossible, unfortunately. And my game character's abilities don't include any powerful combat skills. It's mainly support then. For example, I can collect various materials to create some simple and practical tools, like the iron sword and shield you saw before. Besides that, there are also things like pickaxes, axes, shovels, hoes, scissors, iron buckets, ladders, wooden fences, and torches. That's it? Your ability doesn't seem very impressive? Well, that's true. Besides these tools, I can also create some equipment made of different materials, like leather armor made of leather, iron armor made of iron, and the most valuable would be diamond armor. After a long period of exploration, I've discovered that my abilities are actually geared towards survival. However, based on my experience, even the most ordinary games should have their own characteristics. Since Ishii-kun's abilities are survival-based and can't be upgraded, then I think that Ishii-kun's abilities should possess some kind of special attribute, right? As a seasoned otaku, the little fatty Koto Hirano quickly realized the key point, so he adjusted his glasses and asked with a confident smile, there's definitely something special. The characteristic of my ability is probably the collection and processing of various materials. Hearing Koto Hirano's words, Liang Yue gave him a rather appreciative look. Then, with a wave of his sleeve, he took out a seemingly ordinary iron pickaxe from his storage space, and under the curious gazes of the others, he repeatedly swung it at the wall beside him. Bang bang bang. In less than half a second, the wall that was struck suddenly collapsed from the middle with a pop, turning into a small cube that slowly rotated on the ground. Immediately afterward, it directly transformed into an inconspicuous beam of light and automatically entered his storage space. Liang Yue didn't stop his digging, continuing to swing the iron pickaxe to destroy the wall in front of him. In just a few seconds, the guy's bedroom was completely exposed to everyone's eyes, leaving only a solid wood door still standing there. Then, Liang Yue waved his sleeve again, and the iron pickaxe in his hand instantly switched to the concrete cube that he had carved out earlier. Under the slightly puzzled gazes of the others, with a series of pa-pa-pa-pa operations, the cube was instantly assembled by him like building blocks, forming regular and uniform concrete pillars. The appearance was neat, seamless, just like it had been built by professional construction workers spending a lot of time. Oh, only at this time did the others finally react, each with their mouths wide open and a look of disbelief on their faces. When they looked at Liang Yue again, their eyes started to shine. Afterward, the group began to circle around those seemingly unremarkable stone pillars, stroking and tapping them back and forth for a long time before slowly calming down. So, Ishii-kun, your abilities are geared towards survival and construction. Barely suppressing the envy in her heart, Sayatakaji crossed her arms and continued to analyze. That's pretty much the idea then, Ishii-kun. To what extent can you do things in the most extreme situation? Shikoburo Tsujima took over the conversation at this time, looking at him seriously with a pair of beautiful eyes. The maximum extent, well, as long as it can fit in the storage space, I can almost endlessly dig, excavate, and build underground, and I don't have to worry about suffocating. Although it definitely won't work in water, I can also build and construct almost without restraint, as long as there are enough materials on me. Looking at the slightly confused crowd in front of him, Liang Yue suddenly turned around, pointed to another tall building hundreds of meters away outside the glass window behind him, and continued, I can directly build a bridge from the window here, all the way to that building. Whether it's wood, stone, or iron, it can be seamlessly spliced together in the process, and there's no need to worry about the bridge suddenly collapsing. So, your ability ignores the laws of physics. The laws of physics have long ceased to exist on me, right, everyone? Ishii-kun is really low-key. Before in the academy, I rarely seemed to hear any news about Ishii-kun. Siko-senpai looked at Liang Yue with a face full of surprise. At this time it's almost never heard of, right? Even just in the class next door, I'm not very familiar with Ishii and this name. Sayatakaji pursed her lips at this time, looking at someone up and down before saying curiously, although I didn't really remember the name before, I seem to see Ishii-kun often. On the other hand, teacher Shizuka Marikal had a slightly different opinion at this time, subconsciously tapping her full lips with her fingers, trying hard to recall. However, as soon as she said this, she immediately attracted the strange gazes of Sayatakaji, Shikoburo Tsujima, and the little fatty Koto Hirano. The meaning within was unusually intriguing. This is all the fault of my predecessor. Seeing this, Liang Yue cursed secretly in his heart, and then immediately changed the topic. Off. In my situation, I definitely can't be too high profile in peacetime, otherwise, I might be caught by some research institution and taken for slicing research. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Chaotic Bad City. The discussion ended quickly amidst everyone's confusion, and to prevent any potential latecomers from noticing anything amiss, Liang Yue even took the initiative to dismantle the pillars in the living room and reinstall them back onto the walls afterward. Everyone returned to their rooms, spending their first night in this apocalypse with complex emotions. The next morning, when Liang Yue emerged from his room, the three women had already joined forces to prepare breakfast. A little fatty, Hirano Toda, was holding a telescope that he had found somewhere, peering through the window at their surroundings from time to time. On the second day of the apocalypse, the weather outside was good, the morning light was bright, and the sky was cloudless, but everyone's mood was not pleasant. Everything was as Liang Yue had predicted the night before. Crisis and panic were spreading, and scattered zombies had already begun to wander around the streets below the hotel. Within the nearby streets, occasional fires and thick smoke could already be seen rising into the sky, and from the direction of the Abetsu Bridge, the faint sound of sirens could be heard constantly. It seems we need to speed things up and get to the East District Police Station as soon as possible, and also see if we can get some weapons from there after a hurried breakfast. Everyone had no objection to Liang Yue's words, and after only a slight packing of their luggage, they immediately headed downstairs. During the process, Liang Yue keenly noticed something different in the way they looked at him. It's trust. Huh? Unfortunately, I can only stay in this world for a month, and I can't take you any further. In the absence of police suppression, a group of small-time thugs, who originally could only lurk in the shadows, were now rampantly wreaking havoc in the surrounding streets and alleys. They looted shops, set fire to roadside cars and billboards, and some even used firearms to shoot at fleeing refugees. Perhaps under the crisis of this apocalypse, these people felt that life had no hope and began to take revenge on society before they died. For a time, the sounds of commotion, shouting, cries for help, and explosions rose and fell, and many pedestrians had already fallen in pools of blood. Liang Yue originally didn't want to cause trouble, nor did he want to provoke this group of lawless criminals, but at this time, he didn't want to be accidentally injured by these idiots. Even more so, after discovering this chaotic situation, he immediately stopped the others and took out 4 pistols from his storage space and handed them to everyone, along with 2 spare magazines, each genuine American goods. They must have come to Japan through smuggling, right? I didn't expect Ishii to have such good stuff. Holding the cold firearms in his hands, Hirano Toda seemed particularly excited at this time. The originally harmless Otaku little fatty instantly became extremely aggressive. With my ability, it's not too difficult to get this kind of equipment. Liang Yue shrugged his shoulders upon hearing this. I guess that's true. Hirano Toda didn't care where these firearms came from at all at this time. He was just fiddling with them and testing their performance. Looking at his posture, he seemed much more professional than someone. But what if we don't know how to use them? At this time, Ms. Shizuka Chikal was holding the pistol in front of her eyes like a brick, saying with a blank expression. In comparison, the two next to her, Saya Takaji and Sikobir Sujima, were a little better than this cute miss. At least they knew how to hold a gun, but that was all. They had obviously never been exposed to this skill before. I'll teach you. Having no other choice, Liang Yue had to treat a dead horse as if it were still alive, and temporarily acted as an instructor. However, at this time, he could only correct the postures of the 3 women, making them look more intimidating. If they wanted to truly form combat effectiveness, they would have to fire hundreds or even thousands of bullets. Of course, there are always exceptions to everything. For example, Takashi Kimuro, the protagonist of this apocalypse world. This guy was once able to continuously headshot moving zombies from dozens of meters away with a sniper rifle for the first time in the proper plot, and the killing efficiency was really not slow. It's really a genius. With armed thugs blocking the road ahead, everyone naturally couldn't ride their bicycles ostentatiously like before. Fortunately, those small-time thugs with guns were not professional gunmen, and although the shotguns in their hands were terrifying, their state at this time was close to madness. With preparation against unpreparedness, even though Liang Yue and Hirano Toda were accompanied by 3 girls, they still quietly approached the other party to a position 20 or 30 meters away. At this time, they were hiding behind a flower bed, quietly observing the other party with the cover of the stone platform and shrubs in front of them. But, are we really going to kill people? Hirano Toda was very hesitant at this time. Originally just an Otaku, Although he had mastered considerable marksmanship skills, his purpose was only for hobby. Now that the apocalypse has come, using it to shoot zombies for self-protection naturally has no psychological burden, but if it is to kill people, okay, then let's test it first. Looking at the little fatty beside him, as well as Sayatakaji, Shizuka Jichikawa, and Sikobir Sujima, who were also silent, Liang Yue could only compromise helplessly at this time. Although he knew that the senior in the team should just be pretending to be silent. 390 centimeter square cubic stones were placed on the stone platform of the flower bed at once, and a reliable cover was immediately formed in front of everyone. As solid as a wall, Liang Yue then stood up, put one hand on the stone, stuck his head out, and shouted to the hoodlums in front of him from a distance, "Hey, little brothers over there. We want to pass safely on this road, would you please do us a favor?" Bang! The response to him was a fierce shot from a shotgun, and fortunately Liang Yue saw that the situation was not good and retreated behind the stone in advance, but immediately afterward, he was subjected to concentrated fire from the hoodlums on the opposite side. Under the pouring of a large number of bullets, the stone wall behind everyone rattled frequently, and ricochets flew everywhere. Even the storefronts on the street were implicated at this time, and after being hit by a few stray bullets, a huge floor-to-ceiling glass instantly turned into fragments. Clang clang clang. "Ah, Ms. Shizuka Jichikawa on the side was also frightened by this and couldn't help but scream back, "Hey Arrow! There are women over there. Brothers, kill that man for me. Leave the women behind. Oh. Yeah, capture that woman alive. Everyone have fun later. You've all seen it, it's not that I want to make trouble for them now. At most it can only be considered self-defense." Looking at the three women next to him whose faces were a little pale, and Hirano Toda, who was still silent, Liang Yue spread his hands towards them, forcibly explaining. Chapter 36 Zombie Siege. Subsequently, Liang Yue also stopped paying attention to the others. In the blink of an eye, the teasing expression on his face slowly disappeared, replaced by a calm, unwavering look. He raised his gun with both hands, aligning it with his line of sight, while his body quickly completed the coordinated movements, his energy highly focused. With a turn of his foot, the muzzle of the gun stealthily extended from the side of the rock. Just at that moment, a figure holding a spray gun suddenly appeared before him, looking completely carefree. Judging by the other party's smugness, he clearly hadn't expected Liang Yue and the others to have firearms, so he directly flanked them from the side without any intention of defense. As a result, when Liang Yue's gun was already aimed at him from a distance, this yellow-haired guy with a mohawk was still moving sideways, his own vigilance almost zero. In contrast, Liang Yue at this moment seemed to be blessed with divine inspiration, his state almost perfect. His eyes, with a visual acuity of 5.3, clearly captured all of his movements at the same time. The gun in his hand moved with his line of sight, quickly locking onto the target. Bang! Without any hesitation, Liang Yue gently pulled the trigger at the target's temple. Almost at the same time as the gunshot, the yellow-haired guy's head burst open, a cloud of blood mist instantly rising, also marking the beginning of this massacre. After confirming that this thug was indeed dead, Liang Yue didn't pause at all. He continued to lean out cautiously, using the rock in front of him as a support, the muzzle of the gun slowly moving along the edge of the rock. The second target followed closely. Bang! Then, his head burst open, and he fell to the ground. Liang Yue then continued to rotate his angle. In just under half a second, the third target appeared in his line of sight, showing half of his body. Bang! This shot, the rapidly traversing bullet instantly tore off a large piece of flesh from the back of the other party's neck, even shattering a piece of the cervical vertebra. Immediately afterwards, another thug next to him actually courted death, suddenly sticking his head out from the side, looking over here with a face full of horror. Although Liang Yue was surprised to see this, he would not let go of this opportunity. The muzzle of the gun trembled slightly, and the trigger was pulled. Bang! This shot squarely hit the other party's forehead. Afterwards, Liang Yue suddenly stood up from behind the rock, his face calm, and aimed the muzzle of the gun at the fifth, and also the last, of his opponents. That was a middle-aged man with a shaved head and a hip-hop style, holding not a firearm, but a homemade Molotov cocktail. The continuous and tragic deaths of his companions in a short period of time had temporarily stopped this man from thinking. At this moment, he was standing there stiffly, looking at Liang Yue, who had suddenly stood up, with a face full of fear. Bang! At such a standard practice distance, and with a target in a daze, Liang Yue almost raised his gun and fired along with a cloud of flying blood mist. This last thug finally fell to the ground. Afterwards, Liang Yue lowered his head and checked the gun in his hand, While his mind was carefully recalling his shooting process just now, the whole process took probably less than 3 seconds. Almost all 5 targets were killed with headshots. Perfect, if I really had to say there was a problem. The only shortcoming might be that I'm not bold enough. Thinking about his previous self, although he didn't hesitate at all when shooting, his combat style seemed a little cautious, especially considering the targets he was facing now were just a few thugs with more recklessness than skill. Thinking of this, Liang Yue couldn't help but blink his eyes hard, with an unspeakable sense of confusion in his heart. Speaking of which, this is my first time killing someone, right? It doesn't seem like a big deal. Afterwards, Liang Yue called out to the somewhat silent crowd beside him to continue on their way. For these students and teachers, who just a day ago were still in an ivory tower, being forced to face gunfights and killing, they would naturally be somewhat unaccustomed to it in a short period of time. After all, this was almost completely different from the zombies they had faced before. Laws and moral codes still existed in their hearts. Therefore, for a time, everyone in the team was somewhat absent-minded, looking preoccupied, and only caring about hurrying on their way in the following journey. There were no more mistakes. In just a few minutes, they arrived at today's destination, the East District Police Station outpost. However, compared to the relatively calm streets when they arrived, the situation at the police station in front of them seemed a little bad. A group of no less than 100 zombies was surrounding the place in layers. The gate of the police station was wide open. The defense line that had been set up at the entrance had now been completely breached. Zombies were freely entering and exiting here. Large patches of blood stained the ground, along with the corpses of zombies. Judging by the looks of it, there had been a resistance here, but the final result was the annihilation of the police force. Silently, the group of 5 had now arrived at the top floor of a 5-story building not far from the police station. This building should have originally been a relatively high-end hotel. Many uneaten delicacies still remained on the surrounding dining tables. It was just that the diners and staff in the hotel had long since disappeared, with only a few zombies wandering within each floor. However, for safety's sake, Liang Yue still took action to temporarily block the stairwell leading downstairs with a stone block that was 90 centimeters thick and square. I also agree with your point of view, but the road we came from clearly wasn't too dangerous, so where did those zombies below come from? Saya Takagi, hugging her arms at this time, said with a puzzled expression. Perhaps it really is as Koto Hirano said before, that there isn't just one source of infection in this city. Sikobir Tsujima sighed softly at this time, leaning against the wall to the side with a slight frown on her face, her expression looking somewhat complicated. Then what should we do next? It's still early before the time we agreed to meet with Takashi Kimuro and the others. Koto Hirano, the little fatty, then took out his telescope again, looking into the distance while asking somewhat absent-mindedly, Ishii-kun, do you have any ideas? Sikobir Tsujima turned her gaze at this time, looking at Liang Yue and asking, my opinion is that you guys wait here for a while. I'm going to take a trip to the police station to see if I can replenish some guns and ammunition. Alright, does anyone know where the police station's ammunition depot is? Ammunition depot? Oh, it's hard to say specifically, but I think it should be somewhere in the basement, Koto Hirano said somewhat uncertainly. Upon hearing this, Liang Yue felt that it made a lot of sense and nodded subconsciously. That's right. Then I can't go over from the rooftop. Chapter 37 Unexplained State. After instructing everyone, Liang Yue quietly left the bar, took out a small pickaxe, and tunneled underground. In less than half an hour, he had returned to the top floor penthouse. These are bulletproof vests and helmets I found in the police station's reserves. You should be able to use them. I didn't take the tactical boots because they make a loud noise with every step. Sponge shoes are safer also. After taking out a few sets of police equipment from his storage space, Liang Yue looked down at the 3 women in front of him, at their green sailor suit skirts that barely covered their thighs. He hesitated for a moment before continuing, speaking of which, your skirts, while comfortable, offer very little protection. Should you change them too? HMPH. You're awfully concerned. No need, Ishii-kun, you worry too much, but it's not necessary for now. Ishii-kun, you're so observant. Do you think Sensei's legs are long and white with great skin? I really didn't mean anything else. I was just considering it from a protective standpoint. I wonder what Ishii-kun's plans are next? Please feel free to speak your mind, and don't worry about what we think. Just as Liang Yue was feeling awkward and didn't know how to change the subject, Siko-senpai stepped forward to help him out. Well, if you put it that way, What I'm thinking right now is that I want to clear out the zombies down below first. After hearing Seiko-senpai's words, Liang Yue cleared his throat and looked out the window at the zombies in the district below. Clear out the zombies down below? Why would you have such a thankless idea? Sayatakaji looked at him strangely. The twin-tailed girl's thinking was correct. According to her logic, even if they spent time and effort clearing out a zombie horde below, the sound of gunfire might attract even more zombies. Furthermore, they were only staying here temporarily. Once they met up with Takashi Kimuro and Rie Miyamoto, they would leave immediately. Clearing out the zombies here now would definitely be a thankless task. With that, Liang Yue walked downstairs again amidst the complicated gazes of the others. He must be hiding a lot of things from us. Hirano, what do you think? Sayatakaji crossed her arms, somewhat dissatisfied, and then looked at the chubby guy beside her who couldn't get a word in edgewise. I think what Seiko-senpai said is right. Although I don't know the reason yet, Ishii-kun should have his own reasons. As soon as Koto Hirano finished speaking, he immediately noticed Sayatakaji's unfriendly gaze, so he quickly changed his tone. However, Takaji-san is definitely right too. Ishii-kun should have his own secrets. Here soon, Liang Yue quietly arrived on the street. As time passed, the large group of zombies that had surrounded the police station had gradually begun to wander around. Having lost their feeding target now, Liang Yue, with his many advantages, would naturally not stand foolishly on the ground and fight so many zombies head-on. Although Liang Yue was confident in his ability to protect himself, it was only self-preservation. He was far from being able to push through a zombie horde. Therefore, in order to make himself more comfortable and relaxed while farming task data, Liang Yue, after some observation, quickly selected a tall building not far away as his base. Tap, with stones flying from his hand. He quickly built a simple stone ladder on the blank wall on the side of the building. Then he climbed diagonally upwards, and when he reached a place more than 10 meters above the ground, he built a closed balcony and built a circle of railings around it with stones. Just as he was about to start sniping at the zombies below, Liang Yue subconsciously looked up, and suddenly felt a bright sky and a gentle breeze. After thinking about it, Liang Yue built a thick stone covering above the balcony, and then he was completely relieved. Bang! Bang bang! Bang bang bang! In this modern district built of steel, the sudden sound of gunfire rang out. Bullets were fired one after another, quickly and rhythmically. At this moment, Liang Yue was like a shooting instrument that had not yet had a precise program installed. His movements were inevitably a little unfamiliar, and the pauses and aiming in the middle were also slightly stiff. But under his reckless waving, almost every bullet fired and every twist of the muzzle accurately hit the vital point of a zombie. Slowly, Liang Yue began to gradually adapt to the rhythm of this shooting and became more and more comfortable. After each pull of the trigger, he consciously adjusted and corrected his behavior habits, so that his body could better adapt to this attack. Bang! Bang bang! Slowly, bursts of blood bloomed on the street, accompanied by splashing blood and scattered soft matter, gradually covering the area below the balcony with a layer of dirty filth at a speed visible to the naked eye. A strong bloody smell began to permeate the surroundings, and it was difficult to dissipate even with a breeze round. Faint red soul power slowly floated up under the rendering of the blood mist, emitting a faint light, decorating the surroundings a little strangely. Unconsciously, Liang Yue's shooting rhythm began to become more compact. The speed of shooting and changing magazines was accelerating, and golden bullet casings had covered his feet. From some moment, he seemed to have entered some inexplicable state. Everything in his vision seemed to be slowing down, and all the surrounding sounds were receding and weakening at this time. At this moment, in Liang Yue's eyes, only the sound of gunfire and his constantly moving muzzle were still working. The heart moves with the mind, the hand and eye are combined. This state is simply perfect. The zombies below, with their teeth and claws, seemed to have become the purest targets at this time, so much so that the system prompts that should have been as sweet as heavenly music in his ears were subconsciously ignored by him at this time. Time was slowly passing, and the roars of the corpse group below the balcony never stopped. But under his non-stop ammunition pouring, the roar slowly began to become sparse until a certain moment, when his vision could no longer find a new shooting target, Liang Yue suddenly woke up from this state. He looked around blankly, his tense body became a little hypoxic, and his arms holding the gun felt faintly sore at this time, and his palms trembled slightly uncontrollably. Liang Yue was breathing heavily at this time, and unknowingly his body was covered with sweat. As his eyes wandered, looking at the soul power that was about to drift away, he subconsciously stretched out his left hand, somewhat lost, and aimed the soul-absorbing bracelet on his wrist at them. Chapter 38 Understand Skills. Ling. Congratulations to the host for mastering the basics of spearmanship and independently comprehending the corresponding skill, elementary spearmanship mastery. Plopping down on the wall of this self-made balcony, Liang Yue was rapidly chewing on a large meat pie, trying to restore his somewhat over-depleted body, while recalling the system's earlier notification: elementary spearmanship mastery? Just comprehending a skill shouldn't consume so much stamina, right? Looking at his satiety level, which had been depleted by more than half on his personal interface from Mick, Liang Yue subconsciously felt that something was amiss. System, what was up with my state just now? Was that not a skill? The state that the host entered at that time was somewhat similar to the zone in Kuriko's basketball, which is essentially a product of extremely concentrated mental power. This is related to the host's innate talent for vigorous spirit, and after multiple successful applications, it can be freely controlled and is not within the scope of skills. Liang Yue strength: 15 agility, 18 constitution, 18 intelligence, 23 bloodline, human, sealed, talents, vigorous spirit, affinity skills, language mastery, ricochet, conditions not met, not activated, elementary gun mastery abilities, simple tool creation, game character main quest, quantity produces quality current kill count. 391 elementary gun mastery, upgradable. After continuously dealing one-shot kills to a certain number of targets, there is a certain chance to comprehend this skill effect: accuracy plus 5%, intelligence plus 5, agility plus 3, gun attack power plus 10% proficiency. 173/10000. The skill can passively increase gun attack power? That's amazing. However, I can understand the 5% increase in accuracy, and agility is also fine, but what's the deal with the 5 points in intelligence system? Explain it to me. Looking at his still meager character panel and the newly comprehended skill, Liang Yue couldn't help but have many questions in his mind. Please comprehend it yourself, host. It's like this again. However, they can't be blamed for this. Counting the time, from when Liang Yue went downstairs until he came back now, it had only been a little over 10 minutes. In such a short period of time, he had blown the heads of more than 300 zombies. This record is not something that ordinary people can achieve. Even those real special forces personnel who have received high-intensity formal military training would probably find it difficult to achieve such a record in 10 minutes using only a pistol. Among them, the level of marksmanship is only one factor. Excellent physical condition and mental state are the most important prerequisites, and Liang Yue's current abilities are not just a string of double-digit numbers on the attribute panel. The game character in the ability column is the real hidden trump card. It is precisely because of this special ability integrated with the rules that he can obtain far more endurance than ordinary people, even with a constitution of only 18 points. In addition, continuous and stable mental state, extremely high muscle strength limit, etc., are all hidden attribute boosts he obtained after his body was datafied. These inconspicuous passive conditions are the most critical factors that allowed Liang Yue to clear out a large number of zombies in a short period of time. Ishii-gun, are you tired? Would you like sensei to give you a massage? Okay, Ishii-kun's talent is really enviable. His marksmanship has improved again in such a short time. Maybe it's because of the importance of actual combat. After all, aiming at zombies feels really different compared to simply shooting at targets. I feel that Ishii-kun's progress is indeed very great. The beginning and the end are like two different people. This is probably related to a skill that I just comprehended. Looking at the amazed expression on Takiko Tsujima's face, Liang Yue didn't hide anything and directly pointed out the key point: comprehended a skill. Hearing his words, everyone was immediately shocked and looked at him with disbelief. Standing behind the crowd, Saya Takachi was constantly holding her head, swinging her pink twin tails back and forth. With a numb expression on her face, it seemed that what happened to Liang Yue had completely broken her understanding of the entire world. What kind of skill is it? Shizuka Marikowa is kneading his shoulders while curiously asking. It's just an ordinary gun skill that can passively increase accuracy by a small margin, as well as the power of gunnery or something. It's not as magical as everyone thinks, Liang Yue said with feigned modesty, subconsciously shrugging his shoulders, enjoying the gentle kneading behind him. That's also very powerful. Presumably, Ishii-kun must have triggered some passive conditions, right? Todo Hirano licked his face at this time, chasing after him with a face full of envy. There was even saliva flowing from the corner of this gentleman's mouth. Yes. It said something about getting a certain number of headshots in a row. After the enthusiasm of the crowd cooled down slightly and they slowly calmed down the envy, jealousy, and hatred in their hearts, they began to discuss the next course of action. First of all, Crossing the Omi River is a must. After all, everyone's homes happen to be on the other side of the river under the pressure of the current doomsday crisis. Reuniting with family members is almost everyone's primary plan. However, the purpose of reuniting with family members, in addition to the emotional bond in the heart, is more importantly for the purpose of trust and self-preservation. Therefore, establishing a safe and solid base is also imperative. So, does our Taka-named city have any military bases or armories? Takagi-san, do you know anything about this? At this time, everyone was sitting around a round table, and Liang Yue asked this question that he was most concerned about at the right time in the current apocalypse world. The abilities of zombies are not outstanding, and it is not an exaggeration to evaluate them as trash. As far as Liang Yue knows about this type of creature, perhaps only the zombies in The Walking Dead are inferior to them as long as one can deal with them calmly. Even if one crosses directly through the middle of a zombie group, there is almost no great risk. But if you want to clean them up specifically, especially when Liang Yue has already decided to use guns, the ammunition reserve is undoubtedly a big problem if he could get a bullet production line at this time. Not to mention the current apocalypse world, even for a long time in the future, he would benefit greatly from it. I don't know. I haven't understood any information about this before, but my dad and mom definitely know. Chapter 39 Confluence. In the time that followed, Liang Yue led the four of them on a patrol around the police station. Of course, this patrol wasn't just a leisurely stroll. He was using his abilities, combined with everyone's opinions, to implement some necessary rescue measures in the surrounding area. For example, the aerial balcony that Liang Yue had previously built on that wall was considered very creative by others, and could be a lifesaver in critical moments. This is because, although the zombies after the mutation are very strong, their physical movements are not flexible and they have no explosive power. Climbing stairs is definitely a chore for them, but for humans, the situation is exactly the opposite. In addition, gradually clearing the zombies in the surrounding area was another goal of their trip. Due to the attraction caused by the previous gunshots, small groups of zombies had slowly begun to pour in from the other end of the city, eventually converging into tide. But with a previous experience of clearing them, this was not a major threat to Liang Yue. With a commanding view and firmly occupying the geographical advantage, the zombie torrents that seemed almost unsolvable to others were actually just a wave of rich mission data and soul power containers. In his eyes, time passed inadvertently. And as the morning sun slowly rose to the sky and then slowly fell from the center of the sky, Kamuro Takashi and Miyamoto Rai, who had been separated from the others since yesterday afternoon, finally happened to meet them near a supermarket near Unagi River Road. Compared to Liang Yue and his group's constant running around and taking the initiative, the protagonists, Kamuro Takashi and Miyamoto Rai, were obviously doing well according to the director's script. If Liang Yue hadn't been there, Saya Takagi, Hirano Koda, Jokal Shizuka, and Busujima Siko would have been trapped by zombies. Then, at the critical moment, the protagonist would suddenly descend from the sky with a self-taught motorcycle stunt, making a shining appearance like side-sliding collisions, tailing turns, and even aerial relays between the two. He would take down all the zombies in one fell swoop. This would greatly harvest the goodwill of all the female characters present, and at the same time, lay a solid foundation for the construction of his harem. Even the little fatty Hirano Koda was bought over by the protagonist with a police revolver. This kind of momentum of turning the tide and preventing the collapse of the building is definitely a 5-star protagonist treatment. Unfortunately, this Kamuro Takashi has now met Liang Aoshin, and his peerless talent has no use. Saya, Siko-senpai, Jokal-sensei, are you all okay? Under the backdrop of the joy of reunion, Kamuro Takashi seemed a little excited at this time. After greeting the female characters present one by one, he began to look at the other two guys. Hey Hirano, Ishii, you two seem to have protected the senpais well. You're really something. Hearing this, the little fatty scratched the back of his head a little embarrassedly and said, don't mention it, everyone is just helping each other. By the way, Kamuro-kun, Miyamoto-san, these are specially left for you. As he said that, Liang Yue flipped his sleeve, and in the blink of an eye, he took out 2 police bulletproof vests and helmets from the storage space and handed them over. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Ishii-kun. By the way, Rai and I checked on the way here. It seems that the bridges leading to the other side have been blocked by the police. Also, the bridges are full of cars, so we probably won't be able to cross for the time being. After changing his clothes, Kamuro Takashi suddenly remembered the road conditions when he came, so he said to everyone, since that's the case, it's not early now, and you've been running around all day, Kamuro-kun, why don't we find a place to stay first and talk about it tomorrow? Hearing this, Liang Yue immediately went along with the flow and said alright. Hearing this, Kimuro Takashi subconsciously agreed. Seeing this, the others naturally had no objections. Shizuka-sensei even took the initiative to provide a house for this purpose. It was the detached house of her good friend, Rikaminami, located on the banks of the Onaji River, and it wasn't far from where everyone was at this time on the way. Due to the deliberate clearing of Liang Yue and others, the Unagi River section had become very clean at this time. Whether it was people or zombies, almost no one was to be seen. Why didn't you suggest crossing the river directly just now? With you could build a bridge over the river even if you didn't take the Onaji bridge, right? Saya Takagi, who had quietly fallen behind the others, looked at Liang Yue with a puzzled face at this time, with a hint of suspicion and dissatisfaction in her eyes. Obviously, this girl was homesick. That would be too conspicuous. Now, most of the police force in the entire Takanami city is probably concentrated on the Onaji River. It is certainly feasible for me to build a bridge directly at this time, but it will inevitably attract more attention. My abilities can be shown to you, but it's best not to let others know, otherwise, I might be caught by some forces one day and used for research experiments. As he said that, Liang Yue also glanced at the twin-tailed beauty in front of him with a half-smile, and continued also, it's best to keep my matter a secret from your parents. Got it? Hearing this guy's words, Saya Takagi immediately pouted her small mouth and walked forward impatiently. Looking at the slightly sulky back of this girl, Liang Yue could only smile helplessly. In fact, the reason why he didn't cross the river was of course not because he was afraid that after his abilities were exposed, they would attract the prying eyes of some people. After all, he was only going to stay in this apocalypse world for a month at most. The reason for not crossing the river was actually that Liang Yue wanted to take the opportunity of staying overnight at Rikaminami's house tonight to save another plot character, the little lolly Alice Iris. The purpose was to escort his side escort mission. After all, one more person is one more life. About half an hour later, accompanied by the sunset in the sky, everyone had arrived at their destination. This was a luxurious residence, surrounded by solid walls that were obviously different from the neighbors on the left and right. Even the gate was a product that had been specially reinforced in terms of safety alone. This house was definitely expensive. Chapter 40. The second day of the apocalypse. Following the established development route, the subsequent plot seemed to be entering a fanservice phase. As an author who started by drawing arrow manga as victims suffering from zombie fright and the pressure of survival in the apocalypse, everyone was already physically and mentally exhausted. Suddenly arriving at such a safe haven, they naturally needed to rest and recuperate, especially the four women in the group. Therefore, not long after entering the residence and having something to eat, they tacitly agreed to go into the bathroom together. Of course, unlike the original plot, Liang Yue's appearance had already influenced the destinies of the group to a certain extent, especially Saya Takagi, Sikobyo Tsujima, and Shizuka Marikawa from yesterday afternoon until now. Although they had faced the threat of zombies along the way, they had generally had a very comfortable time. Therefore, Rie Miyamoto, who chose to travel with the protagonist, was the one who needed to vent the most at this time. So, after all the women entered the bathroom, this girl seemed particularly active. Like a catfish crashing into a school of fish, she would often grope and harass the fresh and delicious people around her, and her actions naturally provoked retaliation from the others. For a time, laughter, moans, and seductive gasps blended together in the bathroom, forming a tempting symphony that aroused all sorts of fantasies. In the living room, Liang Yue, Takashi Kimuro, and Hirano Koda were all captivated by the faint sounds, unconsciously revealing pig-like expressions. Liang Yue, on the other hand, didn't forget his original intention for coming here, so at this moment, he was holding the little fatty's telescope and began searching for Alice's figure outside the window. But it wasn't long before he seemed to have made a discovery. Of course, here I am referring to Hirano Koda. A pile of different types of ammunition had been found by this little fatty from a row of cabinets in the corner of the room, and then he and Takashi Kimuro joined forces to violently pry open the locked cabinet next to it. Instantly, a pile of 5 or 6 controlled firearms appeared in front of the three of them. Seeing his beloved in front of him, Hirano Koda, as a veteran military enthusiast, immediately fell into a frenzy, touching here, banging there, constantly caressing and analyzing the models and characteristics of these guns. Liang Yue was confused by what he heard. Although his skill in using guns was now acceptable, he really didn't know much about the specific classification of these modern weapons. So, while the two in front of him were choosing their respective suitable guns, he simply took a black mechanical bow with infrared alignment from it, and took all the arrows from the cabinet next to it. Then, he walked out of the room and came to the coffee table in the living room, and began to load a large number of empty magazines in his storage space with bullets. Speaking of which, although I found a lot of ammunition in the police station's armory, it's too troublesome to use, and some of the bullet models are different. Looking at the different specifications of ammunition and magazines in his hand, Liang Yue felt a headache for a while. Don't look at how efficient he was at clearing zombies during the day, but behind it there were also areas he was not good at in the end, unable to do anything else. Liang Yue had to wave his hand and take out a pile of different types of guns from the storage space, and began to try them one by one. Some of these guns he obtained from the gun store in Brooklyn in reality, and some came from the police armory. Before, some are non-automatic weapons, pistols, machine guns, shotguns, etc. that can be legally owned by civilians in the United States under the law. Some are semi-automatic and fully automatic weapon police models for police personnel, whether it is the cheap AK-47, the 95 automatic rifle familiar to the Chinese military and civilians, the M16 assault rifle common in the US military, or the handsome Barrett sniper rifle. They are all mixed, and then there are all kinds of bullets with various specifications. Some are universal, and some can only be equipped with special guns. Liang Yue was in it at this time, his eyes wandering uncertainly, feeling very bad. Let me sort it out first. First of all, automatic firearms are definitely not what I need. The rate of fire of this type of gun is too fast, and the system task requires a one-shot kill, so it must be prioritized for elimination. I'll give these things to the little fatty and the others for self-defense later. In comparison, semi-automatic is my favorite, but the trigger also needs to be locked, and only one bullet can be fired each time. Shotguns are a bit difficult to deal with. Sometimes a single bullet can cause area damage, but night fell, and the sky gradually darkened just as Liang Yue was immersed in the pile of guns, analyzing the advantages and disadvantages of various models. The mute bridge not far away did not become quiet because the time entered the night. The piercing sound of police sirens was constantly echoing in the air under the threat of the zombie army. People were nervously lining up to accept the strict inspection of the police officers in front, in order to pass the bridge as soon as possible and go to the safe haven in their minds. And at the other end of the bridge, there was also a group of righteous people who had a vague understanding of the situation, but did not mind making trouble at this moment. They were gathered together, led by an unidentified person, holding banners, even sticks, and issuing righteous protests against the police's behavior in an organized and standardized manner with the blessing of the megaphone. Even Liang Yue could faintly hear their slogans like, "What? Zombies are innocent. Refuse to be treated brutally. They are just sick and will get better sooner or later. Patients with murderous diseases need love." Several media and reporters stationed at the scene were constantly transmitting real-time pictures of the scene to thousands of households through cameras. In short, the mute bridge at this time had completely become a pot of porridge under the attraction of these noises. The zombie army, which was not far from the bridge, once again accelerated its speed. Some sporadic dead bodies had even reached the end of the team at this time and began to impact the isolation line set up by the police in the season of cherry blossoms. These various situations are like a vivid ukiyo-e painting at the beginning of the apocalypse. A closer look is really moving. In short, a chaos is rapidly brewing, and the emotions of the people at the scene seem to have reached a critical point, and it seems that the situation is about to collapse. At this critical moment, a police chief who looked mature and prudent finally made up his mind to stand up, raised his hand and shot the leader who was leading the crowd to make trouble in the head. This finally stabilized the emotions of the people at the scene temporarily. Chapter 41 Serialis. Just as Liang Yue was sitting miserably on the sofa, loading bullets one by one, a burst of scattered footsteps suddenly came from behind. He tilted his head and saw that it was the group of women who had shared a bath earlier, finally ending their privacy and indulgence. At this moment, they were walking out of the bathroom, wearing various simplified fabrics and chatting and laughing. Takagi Saya and Miyamoto Ria were alright. Although their figures were good, their intimate clothing tended to be conservative, and they were both wearing camisoles. In comparison, the other two were remarkable, whether it was the black bikini of the senior Tsumaki, or the fact that Shizuka-sensei simply wrapped herself in a short bath towel. Neither could conceal their beautiful figures in the slightest. Liang Yue only glanced at them once, and then couldn't take his eyes away. His lips curled unconsciously, and a frivolous whistle immediately came from his mouth. HMPH. When Takagi Saya on the opposite side saw his appearance, she immediately snorted heavily, reached out and pulled Miyamoto Rie, who was a little at a loss, and walked towards the guest room next door. On the other hand, Senior Tsumaki and Shizuka-sensei didn't feel uncomfortable with Liang Yue's performance. The senior's first reaction was to be calm. After giving him a slight smile, she walked generously to the side, took an apron and hung it on herself, as if she was preparing to eat something. As for Shizuka-sensei, she directly took a bottle of wine from the window next to her, as well as 2 wine glasses, sat down on the sofa next to Liang Yue, with a seductive smile on her face. "Shigen, you've worked hard today, would you like a little drink?" Okay, how could Liang Yue refuse such a good thing? Although he also knew that, according to the development of the plot, he was destined not to do anything strange tonight, but what's wrong with having a beautiful woman by his side? Clink. After gently clinking glasses with Shizuka-sensei and taking a sip at his mouth, Liang Yue began to continue loading bullets while chatting with the beauty beside him unconsciously. After drinking 2 glasses of wine, a faint blush appeared on Shizuka-sensei's face. Her big eyes, which were already naturally charming, seemed to be covered with a layer of hazy water at this moment. A pair of jade-like white arms gently wrapped around Liang Yue's neck, and a hint of fragrant body scent with a hint of alcohol fermented in the air, drilling straight into his nose. Then, Takagi Saya and Miyamoto Rie, who had already returned to their room, appeared. The 2 women were now fully dressed. After arriving in the living room, they immediately pulled the hazy Shizuka-sensei down from Liang Yue. Takagi Saya, who hadn't had time to tie up her twin tails, glared at him warily. Unfortunately, Liang Yue's skin was too thick, and this Mirai dart offensive couldn't even break his defense. Afterwards, the 2 women sat down with the intoxicated Shizuka-sensei and began to whisper, and gradually became oblivious to others, and laughter began to ring out in the living room unconsciously. The 3 of them even brought wine glasses and began to drink together. Liang Yue didn't think there was anything wrong with this, and still sat there loading bullets in an orderly manner, occasionally picking up a wine glass and taking a sip. However, he didn't have any addiction to alcohol, and he couldn't get used to this kind of wine, which generally had a sour taste. However, moderately drinking a few alcoholic beverages can make his spirit more excited, and thus maintain a subtle combat state. Takagi Saya and the others naturally didn't have this kind of awareness, so after a while, the 3 women were a little tipsy, and their personalities began to develop in the direction of silly girls. Bang! At this moment, a dull gunshot suddenly came from the direction of the second-floor balcony. Liang Yue, who had some experience with firearms, knew that it should be the sound of a sniper rifle. It seems that the 2 guys above should have found Hirano Koda. Sure enough, before Liang Yue could put away the loaded magazine, the door of the second-floor bedroom was suddenly pushed open, and hurried footsteps came from the stairs. Soon, Kimuro Takashi, with a heroic handsome face, came to the crowd aggressively. After glancing at the 3 women who were already drunk, he directly said to Takiko, who was slowly walking out of the kitchen on the other side, "Senior, I'm going out to save someone." As Liang Yue said, he took an automatic American assault rifle from the coffee table, as well as 2 full magazines, and handed them to Kimuro Takashi. At this moment, the protagonist, who had transformed into Holy Mother and Savior, was also a little apologetic after taking the gun. "Ishii-kun, it was a little reckless of me to go out to save people. If you want to, I'll help you attract the firepower later. After you save people, come back as soon as possible." Looking at the other party's appearance, Liang Yue also felt a little weak and waved his hand, interrupting his speech. Then, he turned around and walked directly towards the door. A moment later, Kimuro Takashi got back on the red motorcycle and nodded heavily to him and Takiko behind the courtyard gate, and then started the car. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The harsh motorcycle engine suddenly sounded, immediately attracting the attention of the zombies wandering around the street. Then, the closed courtyard door opened to both sides. The handsome protagonist suddenly rushed out like a wild horse, driving the motorcycle under him. Looking at the back that had disappeared into the street corner in the blink of an eye, Liang Yue felt a little muttered in his heart, secretly thinking, "When should I also learn such a cool motorcycle skill? Take good care of the house, I'll be back in a while." After whispering in Sumiki's ear, Liang Yue put the hood on his forehead, turned and walked towards the street outside the courtyard gate, silently, with nothing in his eyes. After a while, he completely integrated into the zombie group, hurrying all the way forward. He stopped about 50 or 60 meters away from the residence. The zombies on the street are now almost all attracted by the motorcycle noise of Kimuro Takashi, even if the protagonist has now arrived at the destination not far away, and the motorcycle has been thrown on the ground, but the zombies next to him are still rushing there aimlessly. Even if Liang Yue kicks them twice with a wicked taste, and then pushes them to the ground, they are all unrepentant. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Bed in McWorld. Let's do it here. With a wave of his sleeve, the small cube representing the cubic stone instantly appeared in his palm, moving as he willed. Then, Liang Yue lightly jumped in place, his entire body soaring up about a meter high, while simultaneously swinging his palm downwards with a splat. A stone block 90 centimeters square instantly appeared beneath him. Then, Liang Yue jumped again, and swung his palm again. In just a few breaths, one stone block after another was quickly piled up by him into a stone pillar about 5 meters high. Afterward, the fellow circled around in place, while simultaneously expanding outwards twice along the stone pillar under his feet, and instantly a mushroom-shaped gazebo with a diameter of about 5 meters took shape. Liang Yue stood at the top, and after piling a circle of stone plinths around the edge of the gazebo, he finally felt that it was almost complete. So, with a spread of his 5 fingers, the small cube in his palm instantly transformed into a pistol, and looking at the surging zombies below, the corner of his mouth slightly curved upwards as he stepped one leg onto the stone plinth in front of him. Let's get started. Bang! 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 A series of crisp gunshots began to continuously echo on the street, each ring accurately taking away a zombie's vitality. With a blessing of elementary gun mastery, the M1911 in Liang Yue's hand actually displayed power beyond the ordinary. In addition to faster reaction speed and steadier marksmanship, each bullet fired brought out large amounts of thick white mixture from the zombies' skulls, and the stench of blood began to rapidly permeate the surroundings. At the same time, those zombies that were originally attracted by Takashi Kimuro's motorcycle noise and constantly surging forward were now, under the influence of the gunshots, forced to turn around and surge back again. They were currently raising their hands, opening their mouths wide, and emitting bursts of unconscious wails from their throats, futilely crowding around the gazebo beneath Liang Yue. Then, waiting to be executed one by one with headshots. As a highly self-regarded protagonist, Takashi Kimuro quickly understood Liang Yue's plan after hearing the gunshots, so he also subconsciously tried to avoid making any noise with the little lolly Alice, and the small dog named Jiku. After the zombies outside the door were lured away by the gunshots, he immediately carried Alice on his back, took the small dog, quietly left the hiding place, went around a large circle, and returned to the group's residence from another street. Liang Yue naturally knew nothing about this, and at this moment he was concentrating on cleaning up the zombies below, almost single-handedly slaughtering these corpses with an astonishing efficiency of 2 shots per second. A large number of headshot corpses quickly covered the surrounding streets, and the air was filled with a fishy stench of what seemed like expired blood plasma. In just 5 or 6 minutes, there was no longer a single target that could stand and walk below the stone pavilion. Main quest: quantity produces quality. Current kill count: 1023. Looking at it this way, the data of 10,001 hit kills doesn't seem too difficult. Carrying a body full of bloody smell, and the excited mood after the slaughter, Liang Yue vigorously rubbed the soles of his shoes twice in the dirt pile on the side, and then walked into the courtyard amidst Sikobir Sujima's calm smile. In the living room, Shizuka-sensei was already sleeping sweetly on the sofa, with a light blanket draped over her body, but Rie Miyamoto and Saya Takagi were temporarily nowhere to be seen. Takashi Kimuro and Hirano Kauto were already sitting in front of the coffee table at this time, somewhat silently fiddling with a pile of firearms on the table. How is it? Were the people successfully rescued? Looking at the 2 people in front of him, Liang Yue asked. Knowing the answer, he naturally knew that with Takashi Kimuro, the protagonist, taking action, the little lolly who had just lost her relatives must be safe and sound. And even the little dog was unharmed throughout the entire process. But in order to make his expression more reasonable, Alice is currently cleaning herself with the help of Rie and Saya. This time it was really thanks to Ishii-san, otherwise, I'm afraid we wouldn't have escaped so easily. Hearing this, Takashi Kimuro also immediately looked at him with a grateful expression, expressing his gratitude at the same time. There seemed to be some different brilliance in the pair of eyes looking at him. However, Liang Yue was not surprised by this. Anyone who saw his ability and the monster slaying mode for the first time would probably have some thoughts. No need to mind it. It's all just things within my power. Liang Yue just waved his hand upon seeing this. Ishii-kun should also go take a shower in a while, after working hard and coming back. It seems like you've brought back some smell on your body. Siko-senpai also spoke up from the side at this time to remind him. After saying that, the senpai continued to walk towards the direction of the kitchen. Now there are more and more zombies outside. I wonder what Ishii-san thinks. The primary task is of course to cross the river. Aren't everyone's families also on the other side of the river? Then I wonder about Ishii-san's family. They are all gone. Nagominase, It's okay. In the following time, the few people in the living room began to discuss the countermeasures for the future. However, for Liang Yue, who was familiar with the plot, the other party's suggestions were obviously not very novel, so he just responded in a half-hearted manner, while constantly loading bullets into the empty magazines in his hand. Soon, Alice Hillies, who was indirectly saved by him, came to the living room accompanied by Takagi and Miyamoto, and exchanged pleasantries and self-introductions with him. The sky outside the window gradually darkened, and the police sirens on the Afubushi Bridge continued to echo in the air. Swarms of zombies were now surging along the straight city transportation lines. And soon the police were outnumbered and broke through the blockade lines one after another. A massacre began to be staged in the night. Bursts of screams and cries for help echoed in the outside world. Relatively speaking, the residence where everyone was at this time enjoyed a brief period of peace, just like you hiding in the quilt under a rainstorm, warm and comfortable, temporarily isolating the disturbances from the outside world. After taking a shower, Liang Yue came to the living room. The lights in the residence had been turned off, and the tired people had already returned to their rooms on the soft sofa. Shizuka-sensei was still immersed in sweet sleep. Seeing this, Liang Yue smiled lightly, and with a wave of his sleeve, a small bed appeared in his palm. This is a bed unique to the Mech world, made of 3 units of wool and 3 blocks of wood, which has a pivotal position in the game when placed in reality. It has the effects of helping sleep, conditioning, and even accelerating the recovery of injuries. Definitely more comfortable than sleeping on the sofa. Chapter 43 Crossed the River. As Liang Yue gradually awoke from his deep slumber in the early morning, someone was already bustling about in the living room, and the aroma of food wafted from the kitchen. As his consciousness gradually returned, he felt a slight heaviness on his chest and a faint itch in his nostrils. Opening his eyes, he saw that Shizuka-sensei, who had been curled up on the sofa, had somehow ended up lying on his bed, embracing him with one arm and one leg through the blankets. A beautiful sleeping face was buried in the hollow of his neck, golden hair scattered and exuding a faint fragrance. Well, last night, Liang Yue had placed the bed clothes to the sofa before going to sleep, mainly to prevent Shizuka-sensei from falling off the sofa. He definitely didn't have any other intentions. The beds in Mech are just not good in this aspect. Anyone with a weak will who lies on it will wake up to broad daylight. For example, right now, the sun outside the window has already risen in the distance, and the bright sunlight is shining through the glass, making the blanket feel warm and exceptionally comfortable. Liang Yue subconsciously looked around and quickly found a grandfather clock in the corner of the living room. It's not even 7 o'clock yet. It's not late at all for Liang Yue, who had always prided himself on being firm and decisive. He naturally wouldn't admit that his will was not strong enough, and that he himself would sleep until broad daylight. The reason was that he wanted to sleep. Oh, you're finally awake? I didn't expect you to even have a bed prepared. Takagi's voice came from the side at this moment, with a hint of teasing in her tone. A bed is an essential item for home travel, and my bed is different from ordinary beds. Don't look down on its appearance, but its functions are better than all other similar products. HMPH. Reaching out to pat the delicate body beside him, Liang Yue then crawled out of the blanket. Shizuka-sensei was also awakened by his movements, sitting up groggily, yawning and subconsciously stretching, and the blanket originally wrapped around her body suddenly slipped off her smooth skin. Fortunately, Rie Miyamoto, who was quick-witted and quick-handed, immediately reached out and pulled the blanket back when she saw that the situation was not right, thus avoiding the risk of exposing her body. Soon, after some hasty scrambling and finishing breakfast, the group began to pack their luggage, preparing to cross the river early to the other side and find their families. In the original storyline, they crossed the river in the Hummer H1 that Takaji had modified in this mansion. Now, everyone has the same idea. As for asking Liang Yue for help to build a bridge over the river, no one had ever mentioned it from beginning to end, which was somewhat beyond his expectations. Soon, everyone got into the spacious Hummer car, while Liang Yue and Sikobir Tsujima climbed directly onto the roof, to keep watch and clear obstacles on the road ahead. The driver's seat was naturally still firmly held by the female driver, Shizuka Marikawa. With a step on the gas pedal, the group left the mansion that had safely sheltered them for the entire night. Before leaving, everyone thoroughly ransacked the mansion, from food, various daily necessities, to spare fuel, firearms, and so on. Without the maintenance of these violent organs, the main force of the zombie army should have crossed the bridge and invaded the other side of the Royal Death River the third day of the apocalypse, and there is still no decent counterattack. Are the armies of this world pigs? Liang Yue squatted on the roof of the car, feeling the warm wind blowing in his face, but he secretly despised them in his heart. If his memory was correct, it seemed that just last night, Air Force One, The US president's flagship aircraft had also been invaded by zombies. A group of federal leaders, including the president, had also been bitten by zombies, although the specific reasons for this were temporarily unknown. The danger of this biohazard crisis was far greater than what Liang Yue had actually seen and analyzed. Faced with the harassment of the zombie army, the generals and individuals in the army had their IQs dropped one after another, and they were slowly being eaten away. So many advanced weapons and equipment in their hands had eventually become a pile of useless decorations. The only use may be the nuclear deterrent in a day or two, right? However, accompanied by a burst of water turbulence, the Hummer H-1 carried everyone from the gentle slope of the riverbank and plunged into the turbulent river. Although the specific reason was unknown, this modified vehicle did have quite good water driving ability, and in terms of sealing, it was definitely professional grade. Even with the entire lower half of the car immersed in the river, the inside of the car was still watertight, which was exceptionally reassuring. In just a moment, everyone successfully crossed the river and arrived on the other side. The riverbank at this time was quiet and uninhabited. Apart from a few zombies still wandering on the Royal Death Bridge in the distance, there was almost nothing unusual. Liang Yue jumped off the car, climbed nimbly up the embankment, and after looking around, he finally confirmed the safety of the surroundings, so he turned around and waved to everyone below the slope. Receiving the signal, Shizuka-sensei stepped on the gas pedal, and the vehicle under her immediately burst out with strong power like a charging wild bull. It rushed up the embankment with at least a 60-degree slope in one go. This power, no one can compare to it. The surroundings seem to be very quiet, and there isn't even a corpse. It's so peaceful, but this river ultimately failed to stop the attack of the dead. Those zombies should have crossed the Royal Death Bridge. The fact that they are not here can only mean that they were attracted by something and concentrated in certain places. We must not be careless. Then where should we go next? Takaji's home is on the 2nd street of Higashisaka, which is closest to here. How about we go there first? After a discussion, everyone quickly confirmed their temporary destination. Only Liang Yue was silent on the side, watching these self-talking protagonists, secretly sighing to himself. It seems that the strategies discussed before were all in vain. The inertia of the plot is really powerful. Thinking of this, Liang Yue couldn't help but look at Sikobir Tsujima, Saya Takaji, and Koto Hirano beside him. Well, when we get to a place with zombies later, just drop me off. I want to take some temporary solo action. Chapter 44 Accident on the Way. Baka? What did you say before? Occupy the seaside airport and defend it, or something? Are you saying it's all fake? Hearing Liang Yue's words, Saya Takaji in the passenger seat suddenly got a little agitated and immediately turned her head to look at him with an unkind expression. Previously, under her intentional or unintentional persuasion, this pink-haired young lady seemed to have been convinced by his point of view. That is, the walls of her Takaji family, no matter how strong, could not stop the siege of zombies. If she chose to defend to the death, she would only face collapse in the end. Therefore, Saya Takaji had already made up her mind that after returning home, she would do her best to persuade her parents to transfer the power of her family to the seaside airport as soon as possible. Although it was a little further away from the city, it had a superior geographical location. It was surrounded by the sea, with only one cross-sea bridge connecting it to the land. As long as they could get 1 or 2 ships, they wouldn't have to worry about being trapped at that time. Whether it was going out to find supplies or transferring personnel when necessary, they would be backed by the sea, which would be equivalent to occupying a strategic location, allowing them to advance and retreat freely. But now, just as Saya Takaji was full of ambition in her heart and was about to go home and try her best to persuade her parents, Liang Yue was going to desert and advance. Saya-chan, you misunderstood. I just want to leave for a while temporarily, and the purpose of my leaving is just to solve as many zombies as possible when necessary. I will also be responsible for attracting the firepower of the zombies for you and helping you to implement the strategic transfer plan. Seeing this, Liang Yue didn't care and calmly explained a few words for him. At this time, sending the people in the car to the Takaji family was equivalent to temporarily putting the protagonist and his party into a safe zone. With the lives of everyone safe, he would naturally shift his focus back to the main quest. At the same time, his behavior of farming zombies to increase his stats would inevitably make the Takaji family safer in disguise. Why not solve as many zombies as possible? Could it be that Ishii-kun can really increase his strength by farming those monsters? Or is he already able to level up? Hearing this, Saya Takaji fell into silence, but Koto Hirano next to her lit up and immediately asked excitedly, I can't level up myself, but the skill I learned before is still available. It probably needs 10,000 one-hit kills or something. Liang Yue didn't hide anything about this and answered generously, oh. Sugoi. Sugoi. After receiving a definite answer, Kota Hirano immediately looked fanatical, his face flushed, and the hint of envy in the depths of his eyes could not be hidden. In comparison, the people in the car, and even Takashi Kimuro and Rie Miyamoto, who were on the lookout on the roof, all stretched their heads down from the sunroof. The excitement and envy on their faces were no better than this little fatty. Then, if something happens, where should we go to find you? Looking at the reactions of the people around her, Sayatakaji crossed her arms and continued to ask with a disdainful look, that's a problem, but don't worry, I'll probably be active around your Takagi family for the next few days. After all, it's the same to clear zombies anywhere. Prioritizing the clearing of the area around your house shouldn't be too difficult, and I'll probably make a lot of noise to gather the zombies faster. As he spoke, Liang Yue suddenly flipped his sleeve and took out a megaphone from the storage space, gesturing to the little girl. Then, this guy's mind changed again, and the megaphone in his hand immediately disappeared, replaced by a travel map marking the accurate locations of all the districts in Takaname City. Why don't we plan the clearing locations in advance now, and strive to eliminate the obstacles on your transfer route with maximum efficiency? The car drove along, and after about 10 minutes, the figures of zombies suddenly appeared on the originally empty street. Through the windshield, Liang Yue could easily see a large group of dead bodies clustered at the corner of the street ahead. Sayatakaji, who was familiar with the surrounding terrain, immediately gave instructions to Shizuka-sensei in the driver's seat to turn. Then she turned her head and looked at Liang Yue with an anxious expression. I've already told you the location, where are you planning to get off? Unable to do anything else, it could only rely on the powerful car under it to forcibly crash a path through the zombies. Ping ping pang pang pa ji gula. A series of zombies were knocked flying, with broken limbs and arms flying everywhere. In just a few breaths, large patches of blood had already covered the entire car body. This sharp turn of events immediately caused the little lolly Alice to scream incessantly, and finally she hugged her head with both hands and plunged directly into Kota Hirano's arms. However, at this moment, Rie Miyamoto and Takashi Kimuro, who had been guarding on the roof, suddenly issued a warning. No. We can't go any further. Stop quickly. Sikobir Sujima, who had been paying attention to the road ahead, seemed to have noticed something bad and quickly reminded them there's a steel cable ahead. Stop quickly. No, the car is going too fast. Shizuka-sensei in the driver's seat had already stepped on the brakes to the bottom, but the Hummer was still flying forward. With its powerful inertia turned the car sideways. Squeak, accompanied by a harsh friction sound. The tires left scorched black marks on the ground. The car, which had been rampaging through the zombie pile, finally stopped on the street before it crashed into the steel cable ahead. The heavy car body also uncontrollably flipped to one side, but was eventually bounced back by the tough steel cable. However, this sudden sharp turn and stop made the two people on the roof suffer. Rie Miyamoto couldn't adjust in time and was thrown to the front of the car, then fell heavily to the ground, looking painful. Fortunately, it looks like she just fell, and has temporarily lost her ability to move, but there's no blood flowing from her body. While everyone was dizzy and their blood was surging from this change, Liang Yue, who had been prepared for it, had no problems at all. His attention had been focused on Rie Miyamoto in front of the car. After initially confirming that she was fine, he was amazed by the protagonist's halo, and at the same time, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he flipped his sleeve, and a semi-automatic pistol was immediately in his palm. He opened the car door and greeted the oncoming zombie army. Chapter 45. Every shot is a headshot. It was called an army, but the density of zombies in front of them wasn't actually that high in the original storyline. The protagonist and a few others were able to hold out from the sunny morning until dusk, which gives you an idea of how much of a paper tiger the so-called army was. However, as the Hummer drove along, it kept hitting zombies along the way. Everywhere you could see, there were scattered zombies. Therefore, in terms of total numbers, the number of zombies on this street was still quite large. There are probably 500 or 600. We might attract even more later. Bang! 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 While Liang Yue was lost in thought, his hands didn't slow down at all. The gun moved as he pleased, his eyes followed, and he kept pulling the trigger, accompanied by a series of gunshots as fast as firecrackers. Bullets rained down like crazy. After training and laying the groundwork against over 1,000 active targets, Liang Yue's marksmanship had naturally reached a certain level. In addition, with a passive bonus of the beginner gun mastery skill, his overall gun skills were invisibly raised another level. As a result, Liang Yue seemed to have transformed into a professional killing machine. Every time the muzzle shook, a zombie would be headshot and taken away in just a few seconds. All the zombies within 10 meters around the Hummer were cleared away, turning into corpses that fell limply to the ground. Liang Yue turned his head and glanced at the people behind him, but didn't say much. He continued to pull the trigger, pouring firepower forward like crazy, while he himself slowly advanced step by step. The deafening gunshots echoed in the street in front of him. The zombies in the distance were attracted by the sound and began to move, slowly but firmly surging towards this side. Liang Yue changed one magazine after another. Facing the surging tide of corpses, he remained calm and methodically kept the zombies 10 meters away from him. Time passed little by little. The zombies in front kept falling, but they were constantly replenished from behind. For a time, Liang Yue alone seemed to be in a tug-of-war with the group opposite him. One by one, bright red soul powers, like bubbles, swayed and wandered in the air, slowly floating up from the corpses on the ground, and finally filled the entire street. About half an hour later, when the last zombie fell, Liang Yue had walked from one end of the street to another intersection, starting from the temporarily stalled Hummer, spanning about 300 meters in the middle. Thousands of corpses were densely packed in the middle. Blood spread across the entire street, and the strong stench seemed to solidify. Lingering in the air for a long time and unable to dissipate, Liang Yue, covered in sweat, walked back to the others with his back to the setting sun, as if he had just returned from the abyss of hell. The almost infinite stamina that was said to be fused with Amic rules began to become a little unbearable at this time. His chest kept rising and falling, and his satiety was also decreasing after the unbridled venting of firepower. His spirit also began to become a little sluggish because every bullet fired represented a precise target calibration. Toshimako Birsujima silently handed over a bottle of water at this time, and the look in her eyes seemed particularly bright in the original plot. Without Liang Yue, this upperclassman's performance seemed particularly dazzling. In addition to her superb swordsmanship, she also seemed to perform a stunt of dodging bullets with her chest. When I first saw it that year, it almost blinded my eyes. Main quest: quantity produces quality. Current kills 2387. Okay, I'll leave for now. Take care of yourselves. I estimate we'll be able to meet again in a few days. At this time, behind the steel cable net, a convoy was approaching quickly. Liang Yue, who noticed this movement, quickly confirmed the identity of the other party. So, with a few points of calm restored in his heart, he smiled gently at everyone, waved goodbye, and slowly left. Along the way he came. Can I leave with you, Ishii-kun? Also, you seem to need someone to take care of you, the upperclassman asked, looking at his back. No need. Besides clearing zombies these days, I will also try to adjust myself. Liang Yue waved his hand without turning his head and continued walking forward. Anu, I also want to be with Ishii-kun. Shizuka Marikwa also got out of the driver's seat at this time, looking at Liang Yue, who was getting farther and farther away, and said hesitantly. Then, her eyes turned to Toshimako Birsujima beside her. Slightly different from the development in the original plot, due to the intervention of Liang Yue, the interpersonal center that the teacher and upperclassmen focused on from the beginning seemed to have some deviations. Takashi Kimuro, as the protagonist, still has a handsome face and acts just as unrestrained. He also has his own strengths in facing the pressure of the apocalypse, but all of his performance, if placed in front of Liang Yue, would at best be a joke. There was almost no comparability between the two from the perspective of being trusted. The other party was even blasted out of his range by an unknown distance as a result. Even though the two women are now facing a choice of a local powerhouse like the Takagi family, they still feel in their hearts that following Liang Yue seems to be the safer side. Silently, the upperclassman reached out a hand to Shizuka Marikwa beside her. The two then stepped on the streets covered with blood, mud and corpses, and quickly chased in the direction Liang Yue left. Upon seeing this, Saya Takagi, Takashi Kimuro, and the others behind them didn't say anything to stop them. In terms of the closeness of the relationship, there seemed to be some gaps between them and the upperclassman and teacher. It was the survival pressure of the apocalypse that brought them together, but still, because of Liang Yue, the inside of this team has not experienced too many twists and turns and redemption. The only separation between everyone was caused by Rie Miyamoto's willfulness, and then Takashi Kimuro, as the protagonist and childhood sweetheart, went after her. This in itself is blameless, and may even earn a bit of an impression of valuing love in everyone's hearts, but due to the appearance of Liang Yue, he has resolved the crisis situations that should have suddenly descended on the protagonist and then turned the tide and advanced several times. So, at this time, Takashi Kimuro's importance in the team has been infinitely weakened. Chapter 46: Monster Spawning in Progress. Sorry Mom, are they your companions too? Why don't they come to our house? And what's with all the corpses in the street? Did you guys take care of them all? No, that person cleaned them up. He's a bit strange, but that's not important. Mom, I have something very important to tell you. This isn't the place to talk. Let's go home first. Your classmate seems to be seriously injured and needs treatment. It's been a while, Kamuro-kun Yuriko and, hello. Just as the group beside the Hummer met Takagi Yuriko and the others, and were heading to the Takagi estate with everyone's help, Liang Yue, Siko-senpai, and Shizuka-sensei naturally came together as well, faced with the two women's initiative to follow. Whether it was for the needs of the mission or the emotional entanglement in his heart, he naturally couldn't refuse, and in the end, he had no choice but to take them with him. You two shouldn't have come with me. You'll be safer after entering the Takagi house. If Saya can persuade her parents to transfer sooner, they might be able to establish a stable base in a short time. What you said is right, but I, Shizuka-sensei, still think it's more reliable to follow Ishii-kun. Is that so? Then you have to be careful, don't end up throwing yourself in. He actually, in choosing to follow Ishii-kun this time, Siko already had this kind of awareness. Although Ishii-kun's combat power is very strong, and he can easily solve enemies that others cannot reach, but after a long time of fighting, he also needs someone to be by his side for comfort and care. This kind of thing. Hearing what she said, Liang Yue's heart also warmed up suddenly, looking at the two women beside him who looked like they were taking it for granted, and slightly shy. An unspeakable emotion surged into his heart at this moment. That you have to think it over, of course. Please take care of me in the days to come, Ishii-kun. Or is it that he has really become their reliance? For a time, various distracting thoughts suddenly arose in Liang Yue's mind, but then he threw them behind him. Okay. Since that's the case, then it's time for me to share some secrets with you, eh? It seems Ishii-kun has been hiding a lot of things from us. Siko is looking forward to knowing about Ishii-kun, but this is not the place to talk. Let's find a quiet place first. Era. Ishii-kun is actually not from this world. Yeah, I descended to this world to train, but, in my mind, I seem to always remember Ishii-kun's appearance. This may sound a little unbelievable, but it's actually just a means of influencing memory. For the existence that sent me to this world, it's nothing then. Ishii-kun's original name should be Liang Yue. Inside a small engine shop with a not small storefront, the three of them were sitting around a round table, with some snacks scavenged from the original owner's refrigerator in front of them, such as various candies, fruits, melon seeds, yogurt, and so on. However, the minds of the three people were not on these things at this time. Takiko Busujima and Shizuka Marikawa were listening to Liang Yue's narration with great interest and serious expressions. I wonder, Liang Yue-kun, what kind of place is the world you are in? Overall, it's similar to here before the apocalypse, at least on the surface. There are quite a few dangers in the dark, but it's better than being troubled by those zombies then. Liang Yue-kun came to our world this time for training. It is indeed for training, and then to enhance my strength. Moreover, I am afraid that I will often carry out this kind of training in the future. In general, it is more like fighting in different worlds. That's really interesting. Then Liang Yue-kun, after you finish this training, can you take us away together? This, I'm afraid it won't work for the time being, because I've only just entered the starting stage, and I don't have the ability to take you to other worlds yet, but if you are willing, I can promise you that when I have the ability, I will take you there as soon as possible. That's enough. Yes, yes. I wonder how long Liang Yue's training will last this time. It will probably last for a month, starting from the zombie invasion of Fujimi Academy. That's not a very long time. I wonder, what kind of person is Liang Yue-kun in your world? Although Liang Yue had already given detailed answers to the two women on some important issues concerning the future, Takiko Busujima and Shizuka Marikawa were still enthusiastic, and the following time they kept pulling him to ask about some more trivial but interesting topics. Unknowingly, time quickly came to noon. After eating a hearty lunch, Liang Yue took the two women, who were still somewhat unfulfilled, and officially embarked on his journey to farm monsters according to the plan that Takagi Saya had tailored for him before. Liang Yue quickly arrived at the nearest transportation hub marked on the map. The loudspeaker was turned up to full power, and the harsh noise echoed wantonly in the air. Looking at the gradually surging zombie army below, Liang Yue at this moment was standing on the aerial fortress he had carefully built for himself, and the corners of his mouth curled up in an excited smile. Then, he held the semi-automatic rifle tightly against his shoulder, and instantly aimed at the hideous faces crowded together below. Caw-caw, bang. 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 At the same time, Just as Liang Yue gradually adapted to the usage rules of the rifle in his hand and began to enter a state of combat, Shizuka Miracle and Takiko Sujima, who were in a safe place, were not idle either after understanding someone's behavior and purpose. Although they can't directly help Liang Yue fight now, they are fully capable of being in charge of logistics. Timely replenishing ammunition for the empty magazines is their greatest support for him at this time. Soon, in the midst of the fierce gunfire, time went from noon to sunset. Little by little during this period, Liang Yue and the three of them traveled around the surrounding area of the Takagi family, and successively cleared 5 important traffic routes. Wherever they passed, patches of zombies were wiped out on the ground by his wretched tactics. No matter how turbulent and unwilling the dead body army was, no matter how fearless of death in the end, only patches of broken limbs and corpses were left behind. Their value in Liang Yue's eyes was probably just a pile of numbers on his mission panel. Main quest, quantity produces quality. Current kill count, 6,324. Chapter 47. What to do if it's too cute? After night fell, Liang Yue did not go out to clear zombies again at this time. The three of them were occupying someone else's nest, living in an inconspicuous apartment building, enjoying the few precious moments of warmth after the apocalypse. This was an ordinary commercial building, designed with roughly 1 bedroom, 1 living room, and 1 bathroom. The interior decoration was quite fashionable, belonging to the category of lesser-known studio apartments. This box was naturally not really ordinary, because like the bed Liang Yue slept on last night, it was a product based on the special rules of McC. This was a toolbox. In terms of importance, it was far higher than other McC creations. The interior was divided into 9 independent space grids arranged in a 9-palace grid pattern. It was because of this toolbox that Liang Yue was able to create practical tools such as axes, pickaxes, hoes, and even iron swords. At this time, he was using the toolbox's ability and the leather prepared in advance in the storage space to try to create a batch of equipment for Zixu and teacher Shizuka. Leather helmets are not necessary. The practicality of leather boots here is even less than a pair of sneakers with foam soles. The key is the top and pants. Is for myself, because of the equipment slots. Wearing one more piece of equipment can improve my overall defense, but don't I have a better rabbit scout hat? In addition to defense, it can also accelerate and keep warm. No, the elf princess's hat is too cute. I can't wear it out, but then again, with my current monster farming mode, I don't have to worry about close contact with zombies. Right. After some hesitation, Liang Yue ultimately only made 3 sets of leather armor tops and leather armor pants compared to the rough creations in the previous life's game. The McC leather outer armor from the real world in front of him was obviously much more exquisite and beautiful. The texture was soft and thick, and the dark red leather was low-key yet luxurious. At first glance, apart from the material, the shape of the pants was almost no different from jeans. There were few decorations on the surface, but the workmanship was quite exquisite in comparison. The top was simply a retro-style leather jacket, which looked very handsome when paired with leather pants. Toshima Zixu and Jurikal Shizuka almost like this standard leather armor, which was read out with a progress bar in the toolbox. At first glance then, these 2 pieces of clothing were put on the shelf by them. The reasons given by the 2 girls seemed to be very legitimate. That is, they liked to wear skirts. Moreover, Japan was in April, and the temperature was rising rapidly. Wearing this kind of obviously non-breathable leather armor out would be suffering in terms of safety. Liang Yue was protecting them, so there was no need to worry. Okay, whatever you like. If the temperature is too high now and it's not suitable, then wear it later. After putting his 2 pieces of leather armor into the equipment slot, in just an instant, Liang Yue in the eyes of the 2 girls turned into another outfit. Originally, he was just wearing an ordinary home t-shirt and beach shorts, but he immediately became neatly dressed. The dark red leather armor wrapped him just right, and it even had a bit of a slimming effect. The leather jacket and t-shirt achieved a harmonious unity at this moment. It was neither sloppy nor too tight. Setting off, this guy is clean, neat, and handsome. The senior and the teacher next to him couldn't help but brighten their eyes, and unconsciously focused their attention on their 2-piece suit. Liang Yue came to the mirror at this moment, twisting his body left and right, and occasionally swinging his arms and kicking his legs, feeling the flexibility of the leather armor. Afterwards, this guy turned his hand over and took out a rabbit scout hat from the storage space and put it on his head. No, it's still too cute. With a black line on his face, he took off the hat. Who knew that before he had time to put it back into the storage space, his hand suddenly lightened. Turning his head to look, the rabbit scout hat was already in teacher Shizuka's hand. Wow, this hat is so cute. After saying that, the blonde beauty next to her, with a happy face, put the hat on her head suddenly. A cute thing was born like this. I didn't expect you to have this kind of thing, Liang Yue. Is this your special hobby? Senior Zixu also came over at this time, looking at the two long rabbit ears on the hat, with a strange smile on her face. This is not an ordinary hat. In order to prove his innocence, Liang Yue then listed the attributes of this rabbit scout hat to this mature woman one by one, listening to the other party's eyes flashing brightly, with continuous brilliance. Liang Yue-chan, how about giving it to me? After putting on the hat and fiddling with it in front of the mirror for a while, Teacher Shizuka suddenly turned around and looked at him with a smile. Oh? Didn't you say before that you didn't want to wear equipment, Shizuka? You also said that with my protection, there would be no danger, so it's not necessary or anything. It's just not necessary. The weather now is very hot to wear this hat. I don't care. Teacher wants this hat. After saying that, Teacher Shizuka put down the goggles on the hat and put them on the bridge of her nose, and opened her two long legs and ran around the living room with a bounce. It must be said that the acceleration effect of this rabbit scout hat is indeed quite significant, especially when the state is fully open. Even Jurikal Shizuka, who is not good at sports, is almost faster than the protagonist of this world, Kamuro Takashi. Chapter 48: The Importance of a Passive Skill. Time flew by, and 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. In these 2 days, the three of them lived exceptionally fulfilling lives. During the day, Liang Yue would take the two women around to various transportation hubs, trying his best to clear the zombies from the streets. In the evening, they would find a quiet place to temporarily settle down, resting and rewarding themselves if those zombies weren't so annoying. Liang Yue felt that his current state should be more like an office worker rushing to work during the day and returning home at night. The two women at home would do their best to comfort and adjust his mood after he returned. Everything seemed to become regular during this period. Liang Yue also passed by the Takaname City Police Headquarters, which was the workplace of Miyamoto Riai's father, and took the opportunity to replenish a wave of guns and ammunition. It is said that since the previous Abatsu Bridge defense line completely collapsed, most of the police officers in Takaname City had disappeared. They may have sacrificed themselves on the front line resisting the zombies, or they may have temporarily retreated to a certain place, but they were obviously in a hurry when they left the police station, and a large amount of ammunition still remained in the firearm storage, which was a bargain for Liang Yue. Liang Yue strength: 20, average for ordinary people is 10, limit is 20, agility 25, constitution 20, energy 33, bloodline human, sealed, main quest, quantity produces quality, current kills 15,574, intermediate gunmanship mastery, upgradable, continuously targeting a certain number of targets will increase the power of this skill effect, accuracy plus 10%, strength plus 5, energy plus 15, agility plus 10, gunmanship attack power plus 25%, proficiency 4,201, 100,000. That's right, after 2 days of large-scale clearing, Liang Yue had completed the minimum standard for the main quest and exceeded that amount by more than half. In addition, with a large amount of one-hit kill skill proficiency, the original beginner gunmanship mastery had successfully advanced to intermediate. With a blessing of this one skill alone, his physical fitness had comprehensively reached and surpassed the limits of human beings. Liang Yue absolutely did not expect in advance that just a mere passive skill could have such a miraculous effect, but thinking about it carefully, this is probably related to the fact that his current strength is too weak, right? After all, judging by the standards of the myriad worlds, a gunmanship mastery passive skill is indeed nothing. This made Liang Yue feel sentimental, but also made him look forward to his future even more. However, limited by the current apocalyptic environment, Liang Yue temporarily did not have the conditions to conduct a detailed test of his own qualities after the significant improvement. Therefore, he did not form any specific conceptual understanding of his own growth. It's just that in his usual daily activities, Liang Yue felt that his body seemed to have become more flexible. His physical strength was also better, especially in terms of controlling his body and being alert to the external environment. His mind seemed particularly clear, and his attention was more focused. Some small sounds that originally existed around him but were not noticed could now be accurately captured by him inadvertently. Of course, this capture of sounds and alertness to the surrounding environment had not reached any earth-shattering level even compared to some professionals. In reality, there was still a considerable distance regarding this point. Liang Yue was very self-aware. After all, he had not undergone any professional training before, and had always been procrastinating and moving forward in self-exploration. Moreover, although he now had a system, that guy came a little too late. Even counting the time ratio bonus in the MIG world, it has only been a little over 2 months to this day. Nowadays, Time seems to have become Liang Yue's greatest enemy. Strength still needs to be improved. Strive to advance gunmanship mastery to advance before leaving this apocalypse world. 100,000 one-hit kills. It looks like a lot, but it's actually okay. It seems that there are no less than 1 million people in this Takaname city alone now. If half of these 1 million people are still alive, it's already considered good. Another thing is, since you can comprehend gunmanship passive skills when using guns, then if you use a sword, can you also? Thinking of this, Liang Yue couldn't help but fall into deep thought at this time. At this stage, he doesn't pay too much attention to the attack power bonus that these passive skills can bring him in comparison. The improvement of the 4-dimensional attributes that can act on himself is the real good stuff. Liang Yue naturally knows the importance of clearing zombies as soon as possible to accumulate enough data for the main quest. But in addition to this, it is also quite important to leave some seeds on other ability routes. Firearms as ranged attack methods have their own advantages in terms of attack frequency and lethality, but as a hunter who is about to go to the heavens and worlds, necessary close combat ability is also indispensable. As of now, I haven't obtained any cultivation methods, but with a system in place, if I want to become stronger, I will always be much easier than others. Then let's decide happily like this. Unknowingly, another fulfilling night quietly passed. Today is the 3rd day since Liang Yue and the others separated from Sayatakaji and the others, and also the 6th day after the apocalypse. In the early morning, the sky outside the window seemed a little depressing. Thick clouds were piled up above the city, as if foreshadowing an approaching storm. When the howling wind blew the glass window loudly, Liang Yue finally broke free from the pink arms and beautiful legs wrapped around him and sat up from the warm bed. The 2 women beside him felt his movements and soon slowly woke up from their sleep. Era, it looks like it's going to rain soon. Is Liang Yue-chan going out today too? Shizuka-sensei wrapped her arms around his neck from behind at this time, her body pressed tightly against his firm spine, asking with a sleepy look. Yes, although the weather is not good today, it is the same for zombies. I want to take advantage of this time to try to exercise my close combat ability as much as possible. Hearing this, Liang Yue reached out and stroked the smooth pretty face on his shoulder twice, then quickly put on a set of comfortable cotton clothes, and put 2 pieces of leather armor like upper and lower clothes into the equipment bar. Suddenly, this guy turned into a military uniform and stood in front of the bed. Liang Yue-kun plans to go to close combat in this kind of weather? If it rains later, it will be a good opportunity. But everything still needs to be careful. Sikobir Sujima, who was on the side, put on a light sleeping robe on her body at this time, walked to him, and gently reminded him while tidying up the clothes on his chest, "Don't worry, my cleaning target today is there. If I can make a mistake in this, I don't have to hang out in the future." Liang Yue smiled when he heard the words, and at the same time reached out and pointed to a certain direction outside the window. There, a straight highway bridge stood quietly in the wind. Cars of different sizes were parked haphazardly on the road, and a group of zombies were wandering between the gaps between the cars sparsely. It stretched to the end of the line of sight. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49, Relearning Skills. Shoo-la-la. As Liang Yue made his way to the highway overpass from his lodging, a drizzle began to fall from the sky. The rain wasn't heavy at first, but it suddenly intensified within moments. In an instant, the world seemed to be veiled by a curtain of rain. Turbulent splashes of water danced in all directions, creating a mist above the ground, even slightly obstructing visibility. It was in this environment that Liang Yue, alone, arrived on the congested bridge, braving the rain, a sword and shield in hand, advancing slowly and steadily. At this time, the zombies mixed in among the cluttered cars appeared somewhat agitated. The rain relentlessly pounded the ground, creating a cacophony that seemed to disorient the zombies, who relied on sound for navigation, causing them to lose their targets and direction. Like a swarm of headless flies, they flailed their arms, bumping into each other, occasionally even harming their fellow undead, quickly descending into a chaotic mess of pushing and scratching. Naturally, Liang Yue wouldn't stand on ceremony with these creatures. With a mighty swing of his iron sword, he decapitated 2 zombies that were tightly embracing each other. 2 grayish, grotesque heads tumbled to the ground. However, this slight disturbance was like snowflakes in the night amidst the heavy downpour, failing to attract any attention from the surrounding zombies, who continued to wander aimlessly. Seeing this, Liang Yue felt neither joy nor sorrow. and swung his iron sword again. This would allow for a more flexible control over one's own strength. Liang Yu's goal at this moment was clear. Within this limited time, he wasn't seeking to kill a large number of zombies, but simply to gain a practical grasp of the measure of swordsmanship. Even if this measure was just a vague concept, it would be a valuable experience for him, and so, with this purpose in mind, Liang Yue began his training in the increasingly violent rain. Time slipped by second, as rain poured down on his head, flowing down his lithe body in streams. His clothes were already completely soaked, but Liang Yue paid no attention to it. Continuing to slash at the zombies in front of him with his inner fervor, each swing of the iron sword carried his testing and contemplation of his own strength. It was also a training exercise in controlling the angle of attacks and swings, as well as the coordination of his body. Palang, a soft sound after hundreds of swings and decapitations. The iron sword in Liang Yu's hand finally gave way to his abuse, shattering into a pile of fragments, but Liang Yue ignored it, and with a flick of his sleeve, a brand new iron sword immediately appeared in his hand, and he continued to swing it at the targets in front of him without pause. And so, unknowingly, he continued to advance along the highway overpass. Chop, slash, stab, pick, flick, strike, sometimes standing still to swing, sometimes leaping up to attack, sometimes standing firmly on the ground, sometimes standing on the jumbled private cars. During this time, Liang Yue constantly tried various techniques, and constantly consolidated his experience in close-quarters swordplay. Finally, just as he broke his third iron sword and cleared over 1,000 meters of the highway ahead, he finally heard the system notification sound that was like heavenly music to his ears. Ding. Congratulations to the host for entering the basics of swordsmanship and independently comprehending the corresponding skill. Basic swordsmanship, upgradable, attempt to use various sword techniques and continuously inflict one-hit kills on the target, with a certain chance to comprehend this skill effect. Attack accuracy plus 5%, strength plus 5, agility plus 3, sword attack power plus 10% proficiency. 10,000 Liang Yue strength, 25 agility, 28 constitution, 20 energy, 33 bloodline, human, sealed, talents, vigorous spirit, affinity skills, language mastery, ricochet, insufficient conditions to activate, intermediate gun mastery, basic swordsmanship abilities, simple tool making, mech-game character. Oh yeah, job done. Raising the iron sword in his hand high, Liang Yue shouted loudly in the rain. The joy in his heart at this moment seemed to pierce through the rain, and the originally mindless zombies in front of him seemed to be inspired, surging towards him. Seeing this, Liang Yue immediately curled the corners of his mouth into an excited smile, and with a flick of his sleeve, a semi-automatic rifle was immediately taken out of his storage space. Grabbing the car door next to him, he easily jumped onto the hood of a nearby truck. Bang! 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 Having completed his expected goal, Liang Yue naturally no longer had to worry about anything, and repeatedly pulled the trigger in his hand, and a barrage of bullets immediately spread out. He recklessly poured the firepower in his hand towards the zombies in front of him. The surging army of the undead was immediately mowed down one by one like wheat. For a time, the wailing sounds and the gunshots quickly blended with the surrounding rain. Although the zombie army was numerous, they were never able to get close, and there were also vehicles blocking the road, so the surging momentum was quickly suppressed by him. Afterwards, Liang Yue began to slowly advance forward, and as time passed, the zombies on the highway overpass were cleared at a speed visible to the naked eye. In addition, those scattered vehicles blocking the bridge surface also became his cleanup targets. With an iron pickaxe in his hand, he swung it repeatedly, and the vehicles blocking the road in front of him were immediately reduced to neat iron blocks. On average, an ordinary private car could be chiseled into 2 to 3 solid iron blocks. This efficiency is much higher than mining iron ore in the McWorld. At about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the entire highway overpass had been cleared by Liang Yue, and the congested vehicles had been turned into iron blocks and stored in his storage space. Only strange-shaped corpses were left on the spot at this point. The last transportation hub leading to the sea airport was finally cleared by Liang Yue. In contrast, in the past 2 days, the Takagi family's direction did not seem to have any major movements. It seems that Saya Takagi's persuasion and plans for the future have not gained the trust of her parents. At least they should not have fully admitted the correctness of the transfer plan. However, Liang Yue was not worried about whether the other party would implement this transfer plan, because the situation in the island country next was no longer under the control of the other party. Chapter 50 Nuclear Crisis. Around 3 p.m., the previously cloudy sky with continuous heavy rain began to clear up slowly. A beam of brilliant sunlight pierced through the clouds from the sky, shining upon the earth. Liang Yue had already returned to his residence, slowly savoring the sumptuous lunch left for him by the two women, his gaze occasionally looking out the window, a hint of anticipation hidden deep in his eyes. Sikobir Sujima and Shizuka Marikoa were sitting in the living room, filling empty magazines for Liang Yue while chatting and laughing. The TV was broadcasting real-time news from Japan and around the world. The communication signal was intermittent, but it was easy to see that the situation under the apocalypse was rapidly deteriorating. About 2 hours later, the sky, which had completely cleared up, suddenly brightened. A violent white light seemed to bloom without warning in the distance, instantly illuminating the originally dim twilight. Finally, its hero instinctively shielding his eyes with his hand, Liang Yue naturally knew that this beam of light was the enormous energy produced by the explosion of a nuclear bomb. According to the original plot, this nuclear bomb should have come from an attack by an American nuclear submarine located in the Pacific Ocean. Originally, there should have been 4 nuclear missiles coming. But during the launch process, 3 of them were intercepted by the Kongo-class destroyers of the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. Looking at the position of the light, the last nuclear bomb should have been detonated in the atmosphere above Tokyo. The violent nuclear explosion did not directly damage the city below, but the electromagnetic pulse caused by the nuclear explosion spread had a profound impact on Tokyo. Almost all civilian electronic devices suffered. Things like TVs, mobile phones, factory equipment, cars, and even street lights had their internal electrical equipment damaged in an instant, losing their original function. The scope of the impact was so large that even Takanosu City, which was just a satellite city of Tokyo, was affected. The reason why the United States launched a nuclear offensive during this special period was probably just for the purpose of deterring enemy countries. In Liang Yue's view, this behavior seemed equivalent to beating one's own dog to show the neighbors as the world's hegemon for more than half a century. The United States seemed to be having a very difficult time internally after the outbreak of the Doomsday Crisis. The once powerful and rampant American soldiers seemed to suddenly become weaklings when facing the zombie army, and the various defense lines on their homeland were retreating steadily. Even the President of the United States, as the head of the highest government, had been replaced several times in recent times, and the domestic political situation was quite unstable under this crisis situation. In order not to be taken advantage of by other enemy countries on the earth, from the American perspective, it was necessary to issue a preemptive deterrent. The use of nuclear bombs at this time was equivalent to warning those major countries that although I am a little decadent now, I still have the ability to drag you all down with me, so you better not have any crooked ideas. Similarly, since the United States has already launched nuclear weapons first, the other major countries must also respond to declare that their nuclear deterrent capability is still effective. Therefore, before the crisis broke out, the U.S. military bases stationed in South Korea and Okinawa, among other places, were probably going to be lost soon. Being surrounded by several major powers, although very aggrieved, Japan at this time seemed to only be able to admit its bad luck. Regardless of whether this country secretly produced nuclear weapons or not, it could not make a response of equal magnitude. Otherwise, they would likely be nuked in turn by the surrounding major countries. Liang Yue-kun. The TV in the living room is broken, and the mobile phones, computers, and lights can't be used either. Is this the nuclear deterrent you mentioned before, Liang Yue-kun? Shizuka-sensei and Siko-senpai walked in from the living room at this time, and the expressions on their faces were not very good. Don't worry, I've already made preparations in advance. Let's go. It's time for us to go to the Takagi residence now. Looking back at the afterglow of the nuclear explosion that was gradually extinguishing outside the window, Liang Yue then led the two women beside him downstairs. At this moment, in the open space downstairs of the apartment building, there was a square, large metal cube. This was the backup plan he had prepared, a building built up of pure iron blocks. With a pickaxe in his hand, he swung it repeatedly at the metal cube in front of him, and solid iron blocks peeled off from it one after another. In a short while, a heavily reinforced luxury bus appeared in front of the three of them. At this moment, the inside and outside of the bus were completely filled with 3 layers of copper foil, tightly covering every corner. There are many ways to prevent electromagnetic pulses, and using this type of superconductor metal for isolation is one of the most common methods. Therefore, Liang Yue, who had analyzed the plot early on, had also specifically collected a lot of this copper foil during his daily monster slaying process. But sure enough, although Liang Yue's protective measures were all hearsay, and it was the first time he had actually implemented them, the effect was obviously good. Along with the buzzing of the engine, Shizuka-sensei successfully ignited the engine, and with a step on the accelerator, the bus immediately shot out. Still that familiar driving style, under the operation of this blonde female driver, They rushed out of the apartment block in front of them in just a few breaths, drifting and disappearing at the end of the corner. At this time, the Takagi residence, because of Liang Yue's presence, was not besieged by zombies as in the original plot. After all, the zombies in the nearby blocks had already been cleaned up by him. However, the detonation of the nuclear bomb and the sudden arrival of the electromagnetic pulse also caused a panic. Fortunately, the head of the Takagi family, Soichiro Takagi, was a very prestigious person, who timely stabilized everyone's emotions and ordered people to light gas lamps inside and outside the house. The lights dispelled the darkness of sunset, illuminating the entire Takagi family's estate. When Liang Yue and the others drove to the gate, the technical personnel and their families who were sheltered by Soichiro Takagi were collectively eating large pot meals in the spacious courtyard, looking at it at a glance. Under the backdrop of the orange lights, a bit of warmth actually arose. Here you finally arrived. Not bad, you even knew to prepare a bus. It will be just right to use tomorrow. Regarding the arrival of Liang Yue and the others, don't look at how impolite Saya Takagi's words are, but in reality, this twin-tailed girl had already been looking forward to it. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.